Andrew Modime to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Natural Resources that could the Ministry consider restructuring an electric fence in Mugeno Kisashau area in Mwatate constituency to end the ongoing human-wildlife conflict between the residents and wildlife from Sava West National Park. That particular question will be put before the Departmental Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. The member for the Rakanithi, Honorable Gitonga Murugara, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Planning, could the Cabinet Secretary explain whether the multi-agency task force tasked by the Principal Secretary, National Treasury and Planning, with the mandate of studying, deliberating on, and making recommendations on matters of payment of pensions, gratuities, and other benefits to former councillors, completed its tasks as per the terms of reference? Has the task force submitted its reports on the matter, and if so, what are the recommendations, and when the former councillors are likely to be paid their benefits, pensions, gratuities, and other benefits? Those questions will be put before the Finance and National Planning Committees. Member for West Mugirango, Honorable Vincent Kimosi, to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government that could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status report regarding the investigations into the disappearance of Evans Kabungu Mokoya, a case that was reported at Ngong Police Station through Occurrence Book 47/17 of 2019. On your screens is the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Justin Muturi, just making his way into the chamber. I'll hand you over for the live broadcast. Enjoy your viewing. Good afternoon.
Almighty God, who in your wisdom and goodness have appointed the office of leaders and parliaments for the welfare of society and the just government of the people, we beseech you to behold with abundant favor as your servants whom have been pleased to court the performance of important trusts in this republic. Let your blessings descend upon us here assembled, and grant that we treat and consider all matters that shall come under deliberation in so just and faithful a manner as to promote your honor and glory, and to advance the peace, prosperity, and welfare of our country and of those whose interests were committed to our charge. Amen.
Order number 1, manifestation of vote. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Honourable members, as you may be aware, the statute law, brackets, miscellaneous amendment, close the brackets, bill, National Assembly Bill number 15 of 2020, was published via Kenya Gazette Supplement number 89 of June 6, 2020, to effect various amendments to various statutes. The bill, which is sponsored by the leader of the majority party and is proposing amendments to 38 statutes, was read a first time on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. It was thereupon referred to various departmental committees for consideration in accordance with their respective mandates as per my communication of Thursday, June 25th, 2020. Honourable members, I wish to inform the House that I have since received a letter from the leader of the majority party dated July 14th, 2020, requesting my consent for withdrawal of some proposed amendments to the following 8 statutes as contained in the bill. Number 1, the Criminal Procedure Code, Cap 75, the Evidence Act, Cap 80, the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act of 2003, the Public Officer Ethics Act of 2003, the Process of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2009, the Counter-Trafficking in Persons Act 2012, the Leadership and Integrity Act 2012, and the Bribery Act of 2016. Honourable members, in his request, the leader of the majority party indicates there is need to isolate the statutes he has listed above to allow further interagency consultations while allowing the rest of the bill to proceed without delay. I have acceded to this request, which implies that the bill will now undergo public participation, second reading, and other stages without making reference to the withdrawn statutes. In this regard, the bill will proceed as though the withdrawn statutes were not part of the bill as published. The House is accordingly guided. Honourable members, this second communication is on leadership vacancies occurring in reconstituted committees. Honourable members, as you are aware, during the morning special sitting of today, July 15, 2020, the House approved appointment of members to various committees. As indicated by the chairperson of the Committee on Selection, the reorganization of various committees occasioned several vacancies in the positions of chairpersons and vice chairpersons of a number of committees. The committees are as follows. 1, the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security, vacancy, vice chairperson. 2, the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 3, Departmental Committee on Communication, Information and Innovation, vacancy, vice chairperson. 4, the Departmental Committee on Education and Research, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 5, the Departmental Committee on Energy, vacancy, vice chairperson. Number 6, Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning, vacancy, chairperson. Number 7, Departmental Committee on Health, vacancy, vice chairperson. 8, Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 9, Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 10, Departmental Committee on Lands, vacancy, vice chairperson. 11, Departmental Committee on Sports, Culture and Tourism, vacancy, chairperson. 12, Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 13, Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing, vacancy, vice chairperson. 14, Budget and Appropriations Committee, vacancy, chairperson. 15, Committee on Delegated Legislation, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. Number 16, Committee on Regional Integration, vacancy, chairperson. 17, Select Committee on National Government Constituencies Development Fund, vacancy, chairperson. 18, Select Committee on Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee, vacancy, vice chairperson. 19, Committee on National Cohesion and Equality of Equal Opportunity, vacancy, vice chairperson. 20, Committee on Parliamentary Broadcasting and Library, vacancies, chairperson and vice chairperson. 21, Committee on Members' Services and Facilities, vacancy, vice chairperson. And finally, number 22, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Committee, vacancy, vice chairperson. Honourable members, as you may all recall, that the House on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020, extended the timeline for committees to elect their chairpersons and vice chairpersons by an additional 30 days from Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020. The 30 days will expire on July 25th. Given the need to adhere to the said resolution of the House and the health and safety measures on fumigation and decontamination of the precincts of Parliament, which will commence on Saturday, 18th July 2020, I hereby direct all the affected committees to conclude the necessary elections by end of the day on Friday, July 17th, 2020. Having said that, honourable members, I wish to bring to the attention of the President of the House to the provision of standing under 179, subsection 3, which provides, and I quote, a candidate for election as chairperson or vice chairperson of a committee shall submit his or her nomination paper in writing to the clerk by 5 p.m. on the day before the election. Close the quotes. To facilitate the elections to be held tomorrow, Thursday, July 16, 2020, and others to be held on Friday, July 17, 2020, the clerk has made necessary arrangements and has circulated a schedule showing the date and respective times appointed for election of chairpersons or vice chairpersons of the 22 committees. And in this regard, 1, nomination forms are to be collected from the office of the Director of Committee Services on the 4th floor, room 401, Continental House, Parliament Buildings. Number 2, for elections that are scheduled to be held tomorrow, Thursday, July 16, 2020, candidates should make arrangements to pick the forms and return them today by 5 p.m. in the same office. On the other hand, in respect of the elections to be held on Friday, July 17, 2020, the nomination forms should be returned to the same office by 5 p.m. tomorrow, Thursday, July 16, 2020. Honourable members, I wish to guide that the reconstitution of the committees does not affect the usual tenure of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the Select Committee on National Government Constituencies Development Fund as provided for under Standing Order 207, subsection 4, and section 50, subsection 3 of the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act of 2015. The said provisions stipulate that once constituted at the beginning of a parliamentary term, the two committees are to serve for a period of 3 calendar years and are then reconstituted for the remainder of the parliamentary term. For the avoidance of doubt, the initial 3 years will lapse at the end of the current 4th session, and the House is accordingly guided. There's some members who appear to be lost as to where to sit. Maybe. Honourable members, this last communication relates to engagement between the Executive and the National Assembly during the COVID-19 pandemic period. Honourable members, I wish to make this communication as a matter of public interest and to guide the House on the continued engagement between the National Assembly and the Executive and other organs of the state during this period as the country deals with the COVID-19 pandemic. To begin with, honourable members, I wish to inform you that I have received a letter from the head of the Public Service regarding the engagement between the National Assembly and the Executive during the subsistence of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the correspondence, the Executive is cognizant of the complementary relations between the Legislature and the Executive in the carrying out of their respective constitutional mandates. Specifically, it is observed that as part of oversight, state officers from different state organs are expected to appear before Parliament for various reasons. In this regard, there is need to provide alternative operational guidelines to ensure that the officers discharge their duties in a manner that serves the public good without compromising on individual or public health. Honourable members, in order to ensure that Parliament continues to discharge its mandate, the Executive shall continue to avail its members to attend parliamentary queries and summons during this period. However, in keeping with public health protocols requiring minimal physical contact, the Executive has established technological infrastructure and platforms through which state officers can attend Parliament through virtual means. It is a matter of public knowledge, honourable members, that there has been a spike in the number of infected cases in the country in the last few weeks, and Parliament has also not been spared. It is therefore imperative that the necessary precautions be taken to control chances of infection among the parliamentary fraternity. Indeed, Parliament continues to take necessary steps aimed at contributing to the flattening of the curve of infection and protecting members of parliament, staff, and essential visitors from infection. Undeniably, honorable members, committee activities bring together persons from all walks of life, notwithstanding the fact that Parliament has no testing capacity for the disease. In this regard, I have acceded to the request from the executive. Henceforth, all committee sittings will be held virtually unless otherwise stated with my express authorization. These measures are further to my earlier directives to ensure that government guidelines and protocols are adhered to. Honourable members, arising from the above, I hereby further direct that all committee sittings are suspended until Tuesday, July 28, 2020. Thereafter, committees will only operate virtually as per my guidance above. Arrangements should therefore be made for full virtual proceedings of committees before resumption. However, physical meetings will be allowed for purposes of electing chairpersons and vice chairpersons as communicated earlier. In this regard, the election of the chairpersons and vice chairpersons of the various committees should be held latest by Friday, July 17, 2020, to pave way for the fumigation and decontamination of the precincts of Parliament as per the public health guidelines. In conclusion, members of Parliament and staff are encouraged to undergo voluntary testing and self-isolate in case they come into contact with a positive case or a suspected positive case in accordance with the Ministry of Health guidelines. In the meantime, the Clerk of the National Assembly is hereby directed to ensure adherence to this communication with respect to the administrative services herein. And the House is accordingly guided. So thank you, Honourable Members.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Yes, nominee 001, I approved your petition, but you appear to be loitering out there. Honorable Sankok, please.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And I'm reading a petition regarding the economic viability of Phase 2B of the Standard Gauge Railway project. I, the undersigned, on behalf of concerned Kenyans, especially residents of the South Rift and Nyanza, draw the attention of this House to the following. 1, that the design for infrastructure development, particularly road and railway transport, ought to be intended to open up the areas it traverses or terminates for economic exploitation and spur economic development. 2, that having completed Phase 2A of the Standard Gauge Railway from Nairobi to Suswa, the government embarked on design and construction of the westbound Phase 2B of the SGR project from Suswa Dry Port. 3, that residents of South Rift and Nyanza welcome the project with optimism that it will further open up the region for economic exploitation, spur economic development, and contribute to expansion of urban areas along the SGR line. 4, that unfortunately, the multi-billion 52 kilometers Phase 2B SGR line from the Suswa Dry Port stall at Emurutoto Shopping Center, a small shopping center with only one shop and a butchery, neither roads nor any essential social amenities are available there. 5, that residents are concerned that there seem to be no indication of construction of the Phase 2B of the SGR line that will extend to Western Kenya as envisaged earlier. 6, that Phase 2B standard gauge railway project could be economically viable if the 12-kilometer stretch to Narok town is completed to give it an economic catchment area of the Great Lake regions. 7, that residents are further concerned that unless the remaining short stretch of 12 kilometers from Murtoto to Narok town is completed, the project ran the risk of becoming one of the Kenyans' white elephant projects, in which billions of shillings sourced through loans and taxpayers' money with little economic returns benefit to South Rift and Great Western region. 8, that the completion of the 12-kilometer stretch to Narok town could transform, serve as special economic zone and a hub for residents of the region producing fish, wheat, maize, barley, tea, potatoes, livestock products, bananas, avocados, pineapples, soapstones, sugarcane, among other products. 9, that the matter raised in this petition are not pending in any court of law, constitutional, or other legal bodies. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works, and Housing, 1, inquire into the circumstances under which the SGR project Phase 2B project has terminated in a remote Emurutoto shopping center instead of Narok town. 2, intervenes through the relevant government ministries to ensure that the 12-kilometer stretch from Emurutoto shopping center to Narok town, which has sufficient human traffic and adequate economic viability, and that a link to the highly productive Great Lake region be constructed. 3, recommends to the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure and the National Treasury to identify financial resources to complete the 12-kilometer stretch of SGR to Narok town, and to urgently ensure that the already constructed 52 kilometers stretch is safeguarded from vandalism perpetrated by scrap metal dealers, and that it does not fall into utter disuse. And finally, makes appropriate recommendation with respect to ensuring that the short and medium-term viability of Phase 2B of the standard gauge railway is realized. And your petitioners will ever pray. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Is directed at the Committee on Transport, is it?
Yes.
Do I see the chair of the committee? It will be transmitted to the committee through the House of the Legal Majority. And just for the information, general information of members, because I can see members, they don't know. There are some members who like sitting, I think, outside generally. There are very many empty seats. So I can see some who are coming and going into the lobby room, and I think they enjoy sitting there.
Honorable Speaker, we can't know.
You can take a seat. You don't have to. Sergeant at Arms, you can tell any member who is out there, because I'm about to make an important announcement, including those who are walking away, unless they don't want to hear this announcement. I hope I can be heard by those who are in the tents, or who are in some other in the members' lobby. Honor members, very soon the clerk is going to circulate a schedule showing the times and places when each committee will hold, and day which committee where to hold the elections, depending on the vacancies that have been declared. And because there are some committees which have to do their elections tomorrow, it is important that all members who may be interested, I don't know what you may be interested in. You could be in the tent, or maybe you may be campaigning in the tents, but you may not know the members of your committee. So you may be spending a lot of valuable time talking to members who don't belong to the committee in which you may be desirous of leading or taking up a leadership position. So at least it's going to be circulated, so that if you are interested in any of the positions that have been declared, then you know that you must take your forms and deliver them by 5 p.m. today, as directed earlier in my communication. So those who are coming in and dashing out, unless those are the passengers. So I think because I've seen some who are just standing out there and taking leave. So if you are interested in any position, please take the circular, which is going to be distributed shortly by the clerk within the chamber, and perhaps also in the lobby room and in the tents, in the dining, if there are any who are still in the dining. Very well. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Leader of majority.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House. Today, Wednesday, July 15th, 2020, afternoon sitting. Number 1, a report on the Board of the National Government Constituencies Development Fund on project proposals approvals, disbursement status, and restrictions imposed on the constituency account for the fourth quarters of 2019-2020 for the financial year period of 1st of April 2020 to 30th of June 2020. Number 2, the annual report on financial statements of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority for the year ended 30th of June 2017. The annual report and financial statements of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority for the year ended 30th of June 2018. Number 4, the county government budget implementation review report for the financial year 2019-2020 from the Office of the Controller of Budget. And lastly, number 5, the report on implementation of the National Assembly's recommendations to the outcomes of the United Nations Conference of Parties to the United Nations Framework on Climate Change, known as COP24, from the National Treasury and Planning.
Well, the one from CDF will be referred to the Committee on Select Committee on National Government Constituency Development Fund. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
First question by a nominated member, Honorable Gideon Ketel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the Cabinet Secretary for Education that could the CS Cabinet Secretary explain why Bachelor of Science in Nursing degree graduate from Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology and private universities have not been able to secure internship placement in accredited government hospital since 2017. Also, could the ministry consider accrediting more local and private hospitals to offer internship programs to Bachelor of Science nursing degree graduates with the objective of increasing chances of securing employment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Next question is by the member for Matate, Honorable Madime.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 88 of 2020 to the Cabinet Secretary on Environment and Natural Resources. Could the Ministry consider constructing an electric fence in Mgeno, Kasigao area in Mwatate constituency to end the ongoing human-wildlife conflict between the residents and wildlife from Savo National Park? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources. Next question by the member for the Raka. The member has written to me requesting that the question be stood down, which request I have acceded to. So question is stood down. Next question is by the member for West Mugirango, the Honorable Vincent Kemosi, who likewise has written to me requesting the question be stood down on account of his being absent. But you wrote. What do you mean you are far? How did you sign the letter when you are far?
But when I came back, I found out that there was no jam. So the letter was there for emergency purposes in case I was not to make it, Honorable Speaker.
Then when you do that next time,
Yes.
you must then come and also inform the Speaker that
Yes. Yes, Honorable Speaker. I've just come some 2 minutes ago. That is why I didn't want to disturb you. But I'm guided, Honorable Speaker.
yeah, because I had already approved your request for
Yes.
the deferment of the question. But proceed, ask it.
I stand guided, Honorable Speaker, and thank you. Honorable Speaker, I wish to ask question number 102/2020, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Interior and the Coordination of National Government. The question goes, Honorable Speaker, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the status report regarding investigations into the disappearance of one Evans Kubwa Mukaya of ID number 28506914, aged 28 years, who went missing on 5th of November 2019, and the matter reported at Ngong Police Station through occurrence book number 44/17/2019. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, question referred to the Committee on Administration and National Security. Next question by the member for Igembe Central, the Honorable Kubai.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I request to ask question number 103/2020, referring it to the Cabinet Secretary, Tourism and Wildlife. Mr. Speaker, one, could the Cabinet Secretary provide a progress report on the status of the geological survey, drilling, and the construction of Kabukuro Boho in the Igembe Central constituency, which was commissioned in 2014 by Kenya Wildlife Services as a community project? Two, how much money has been allocated and utilized since its inception? And lastly, Mr. Speaker, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that the SEND project is completed? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Committee on Environment, again, and Natural Resources. Last question by the member for Rabai, the Honorable Kamoti Momkale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 113 of 2020, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Education. One, could the Cabinet Secretary provide the Ministry's policy regarding coercion of parents and guardians in secondary schools to pay money which is allegedly used to pay salaries for teachers employed by the respective boards of management? 2, what steps is the ministry taking to ensure that adequate teachers are employed in all registered secondary schools, particularly in Rabai constituents, in order to ease the burden of parents paying salaries for teachers employed by the respective boards of management? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question referred to the Committee on Education and Research. Next up, your statement. Yes, the Honorable Eda Dwele.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to provisions of Standing Order 44.2c, I wish to seek for a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and National Security regarding registration of persons in Garissa and Wajir County. Honorable Speaker, Garissa and Wajir County have over the years suffered disproportionate number of young men and women without national ID cards owing to their inadvertent registration as refugees in the Dab, Ifo, and Dagahle refugee camps in those two counties. Over 20,000 Kenyan Somalis in Garissa and Wajir are currently registered and found in the United Nations High Commission for Refugees database as refugees. Their registration as refugees was an act of desperation by their parents to escape the distress of the severe drought of the 1990s. The difficulty without obtaining national identity card means these Kenyans cannot access employment, they cannot join higher education system in our country, they cannot engage in lawful business, they cannot open bank accounts or even travel across the country. Honorable Speaker, the foregoing are fundamental rights which these Kenyans have been denied for years. Article 21 of the Constitution of Kenya provides that it is the fundamental duty of the state and every state organ to observe, respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights and fundamental freedoms in the Bill of Rights. Honorable Speaker, the leadership of Northeastern Region in 2017 appealed to His Excellency the President on this matter. Hence, the President directed the Director General of Registration of Persons through the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government to develop a framework and oversee registration of these Kenyans and the issuance of ID cards to them. In August 23, 2019, the government formed a task force to develop the procedure of vetting, verification, and eligibility criteria for these stateless Kenyans using their parents' citizenship documentation, the local elders, the chiefs, and other government agencies. The verification was conducted, but since then, nothing has come out of it. Honorable Speaker, the youth verified and who underwent this verification include and they come from the following constituencies: Garissa Township, which I represent, 3,000. Lagdera constituency, 1,300. Ijara constituency, 2,200. Fafi constituency, 2,300. Dadaab constituency, 6,200. And Wajir South constituency, 3,500. Honorable Speaker, it's against this background that I seek a statement from the Chairperson, Departmental Committee on National Security, Administration and National Security on the following. When will these youth who underwent the verification process be provided with ID cards? 2, could the Cabinet Secretary provide timelines as to when he will implement the President's 2017 directive on registration of persons in the affected areas? And lastly, 3, what did the task force do after the verification process? What did the task force recommended after the verification process was completed? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Chair, Parliamentary Committee on Administration is in the House. Request to be channeled through Office of Leader Majority. Very well. The other request for a statement is by nominate the member, Professor Jacqueline Odwor. The Honorable Professor Jacqueline Odwor. Is the member sitting in the tent? Or? Yeah, this is a member who is always very punctual. Is she the one walking? This one doesn't look like her. Can you check in the room out there whether the Honorable Professor Jacqueline Odwor is around? She doesn't look like this one. Campaigning for what? You want to speak on her behalf, Honorable Dr. Tekla?
She was around, but she said she already asked that question. That's what she said. I don't know.
It's not a question, it was a request for a statement. But if, well, in any event, she isn't present, then the request is dropped. You may be right, Honorable Tekla, because the Honorable Professor is always in the chamber. She suddenly appears, comes here. She arrives here earlier than the member for Suba's North. Yes, I know she normally appears before you. Next order then.
Order number 8, special motion, consideration of a nominee for appointment as the Auditor General.
The chairperson, Departmental Committee on Finance and Planning. Vice Chair, the Honorable Wayenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning in its report on the vetting of the nominee for the appointment as the Auditor General laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, July 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 229 into brackets 1 of the Constitution, Section 11/8 of the Public Audit Act 2015, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Ms. Nancy Janet Kafoi Gadongo as the Auditor General of the Republic of Kenya. Mr. Speaker, in our vetting process, we were guided by the provisions of the Public Audit Act number 34 of 2015, the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act, Act number 33 of 2011, Chapter 6 of the Constitution on Leadership and Integrity, Article 250 of the Constitution on composition, appointment, and terms of office of constitutional commissions and dependent offices, Article 229 of the Constitution, on the appointment of the Auditor General, Article 232 of the Constitution on values and principles of public service, Article 10 of the Constitution on the national values and principles of governance, Article 77 on restriction on activities of state officers, the Leadership and Integrity Act, Cap 182, the Public Service Values and Principles Act, number 1A of 2015, and the Public Officer Ethics Act, Cap number 183. Mr. Speaker, as members of this House all know that the office of the Auditor General is a creation of the Constitution 2010, and it is a very important office, Mr. Speaker, enshrined in Article 229 of the Constitution, which I quote, that there shall be an Auditor General who shall be nominated by the President and with the approval of the National Assembly appointed by the President. Mr. Speaker, the essence of this provision in the Constitution is to enable Parliament to play its role of oversight by having an opportunity to veto the appointment and the nomination of the holder of that office. Mr. Speaker, the National Assembly's Committee on Finance and National Planning is required by law to vet and to interview the nominee, which according to the rules and statutes I have cited, Mr. Speaker, we have done. This, Mr. Speaker, enables the nominee who has been appointed to enjoy the trust and confidence of both the executive and the House of Parliament. It is important because, Mr. Speaker, the work of the Auditor General is very essential. Mr. Speaker, among the requirements for you to be nominated to the work of Auditor General is that you have to have extensive knowledge of public finance and at least 10 years in auditing or public finance management. The Auditor General, subject to Article 251, serves for a term of 8 years, just like the Controller of Budget, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there are duties and assignments meant for the office of the Auditor General that are key in the management of public resources of this country. Mr. Speaker, within 6 months, at the end of every financial year, the Auditor General is required by law to audit and report in respect of every financial year to Parliament on the accounts of national and county governments. He is also required by law to account and audit funds of all institutions that are under national and county government. He is also the Auditor General of all the courts. He also audits all commissions and independent offices established by our Constitution. He is also required to audit and report on the accounts of the National Assembly, the Senate, and all the 47 county governments of our republic. He is also expected as part of his work to audit and report on all political parties funded from public funds. He is also supposed to audit the national public debt. He or she, at the accounts of any entity, Mr. Speaker, which is required by the legislation of this country. So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying that the office of the Auditor General is very important, and as members of this House, through the Committee of Finance, we have been able to carry out the vetting process, and we have come out with a report which has been tabled in this House, and I think by this time has been put online for members to go through. Mr. Speaker, in compliance to Section 6(9) of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, the Clerk of the National Assembly placed the required advertisements inviting the public to submit memoranda by way of written statements or other oath in regard to the suitability of the nominee in conformity with Section 6/9 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act. And by the close of submission deadline, the committee had received several memoranda from civil society groups, including the Constitution and Reform Educational Consortium, CRECO, the National Taxpayers Association, Transparency International, African Center for Open Governance, AFRICOG, Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance, and other NGOs. Most of them were challenging the process of appointment of the Auditor General and the role of the Public Service Commission vis-a-vis the independence of the office of the Auditor General. The committee was of the view that those memoranda were challenging the nominee, were not challenging the nominee directly, but were offering advisory opinion on the need for the committee to scrutinize the integrity of the process of appointment and the need for Parliament to amend the law to provide for a smooth transition whenever the office of the Auditor General falls vacant. Mr. Speaker, the stakeholders proposed a specific amendment to Section 12 of the Public Audit Act to provide specific timelines within which a substantive Auditor General must be appointed. Mr. Speaker, this arises from the fact that our last Auditor General, Edward Ouko, left office around August last year. To date, it is almost a year, Mr. Speaker, and that office has been without a substantive holder. And the effect, Mr. Speaker, is that Parliament and the county assemblies and other consumers of the report of the Auditor General are left waiting for a long time to make important decisions on the protection of public funds. Mr. Speaker, the committee also received a memorandum from a civil society organization called Kenyans for Justice, but which was filed after the deadline. Hence, the committee did not consider it in light of this, as we had already completed the vetting exercise. Mr. Speaker, it is critical to note that the importance of this particular office, pursuant to the Constitution and the Public Audit Act, is that key among the function of this office is to ensure that all public money has been used and applied for purposes intended, and that the expenditure conforms to the authority as put by law. It is therefore critical to have this office occupied so that the application and appropriation of public resources is properly monitored. Without this office, it is not possible to oversight bodies
Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's brief on coronavirus situation in the country. Fellow Kenyans, today I want us to address the critical role that is being played by our healthcare workers in this fight against coronavirus disease in the country. Of great importance is the need for infection prevention and control measures to minimize any health risk to healthcare workers and patients' exposure to COVID-19 in our healthcare facilities. I know that we have, on a daily basis, been appreciating them for the difficult work they are doing as our frontline soldiers in this war. The majority of them, if not all, place their duty of service before all and continue to put their lives at risk in order to save the lives of others. Health workers handling patients with confirmed or suspected coronavirus disease face an increased risk of exposure to the virus. Some healthcare workers have indeed become infected with the coronavirus in the course of their duties. The ease of transmission of the virus makes this possible. The occupational health risk of the virus, the occupational health risk to healthcare workers posed by COVID-19 has attracted global and national concern. The government will continue to place extreme importance on protection of healthcare workers by ensuring that they have the right protective gear and if and when they get infected, that they receive the proper care. Ladies and gentlemen, when health workers are at risk, we are all at risk. COVID-19 infections of healthcare workers have been reported in many countries. Here at home, 450 of our valiant healthcare workers are currently infected, and we have so far lost 4 of them to the disease. Dr. Doreen Lugaliki, who was laid to rest over the past weekend, is the latest loss. May her soul and of all those Kenyans who have succumbed to the virus rest in peace. Yesterday, our team of top officials, led by the Director General of Health, Dr. Amoth, from the ministry, visited Pumwani Maternity Hospital, where another 22 healthcare workers have been found to be infected with coronavirus. It is therefore a public health priority for us to understand the risk factors for this vulnerable group to avert further occupational transmission. To achieve the highest level of effectiveness in the response to the COVID-19 outbreak, there is need to use the strategies and practices recommended in the national guidelines and protocols for infection prevention and control of COVID-19 spread. Therefore, it is important to emphasize the role of county and facility infection prevention and control programs with dedicated and trained teams supported by leadership at all levels. It has been noted that transmission of the disease among health workers is associated with overcrowding, lack of established practices of infection control, and poor implementation of infection prevention control guidelines and protocols. Other factors include inadequate training in infection prevention and control measures for both the frontline staff and support staff in health facilities. Lack of this training and knowledge leaves them exposed to respiratory-borne infectious diseases due to lack of personal protective equipment, while in other situations it is the poor understanding of the virus. Fellow Kenyans, in the context of the rapidly evolving COVID-19 pandemic, occupational health and safety systems are critical. There is need to institutionalize structured implementation of infection prevention and control measures in health, in our health facilities, in order to minimize transmission of COVID-19 among health workers. By doing so, this will also prevent interruption of service delivery and allow ongoing provision of safe and quality essential health services, while at the same time prioritizing patient and health workers' safety. Infection prevention and control strategies to limit transmission in healthcare settings include the following. 1. Isolating patients with suspected COVID infection and encouraging healthcare workers to have a high level of clinical suspicion. They should also establish a well-equipped triage station at the entrance of every healthcare facility, supported by trained staff, to promote hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene as essential preventive measures. 2. Applying standard precautions for all patients at all times by putting into consideration widespread community transmission. Standard precautions include hand and respiratory hygiene, the use of appropriate personal protective equipment according to risk assessment, injection safety practices, safe waste management, proper linens, environmental cleaning and sterilization of patient care equipment. 3. Administrative controls and policies for the prevention and control of transmission of COVID-19 infections within the healthcare setting will ensure that infection prevention and control measures are implemented. These include educating patients, caregivers, implementing policies on the early recognition of acute respiratory infection potentially caused by COVID-19. It will ensure access to prompt laboratory testing and quick turnaround times for results to minimize contact and exposure to positive cases. It will also prevent overcrowding, especially in the outpatient and routine clinics, provide dedicated waiting areas for symptomatic patients, and appropriately isolating hospitalized patients. To further reduce the risk of transmission of the disease among healthcare workers, there is need to monitor them to comply with standard precautions and providing mechanisms for improvement as needed. This can be done through regular health worker risk assessments, adjusting workflow processes to ensure rapid triaging and separation of suspected COVID-19 patients. Okay, let me, fellow Kenyans, now turn to our statistics on COVID today. Wananchi wenzangu, hebu tujaribu leo tuwaletee hii habari kwa Kiswahili. Hali yetu ya janga la corona katika nchi leo. Leo tumepima sampuli 14,261 na kati ya hizi masampuli ambapo tumepima 461 zimepatikana kuwa positive. Kwa jumla wale watu ambapo wako nchi na ni positive ni idadi ya 11,252, na kwa jumla zile matest ambapo tumefanya mpaka leo ni 1225,495. Kati ya hawa watu 461 ambapo wamekuwa positive, 320 ni wanaume na 141 ni wa kike. Mdogo wao ni mtoto ya mwaka moja na mkubwa ni mzee wa miaka 86. Mia nne na 32 ya hawa 461 ni wa Kenya na 29 ni wageni. Kwenye sehemu zile hawa watu wamepatikana, Nairobi ina watu 248, Machakos 97, Kiambu 20, Kajiado 15, Migori 14, Busia 12, Nakuru 11, Laikipia 7, Nyeri 7, Kilifi 6, Lamu 4, Uasin Gishu 4, Kakamega 3, Kisii 3, Kisumu 2, Makueni 2, Mombasa, Taita Taveta na Bomet 1 kila county. Pia leo tuna furaha kuwaeleza ya kwamba tumeshawacha kutoka hospitali patients 51, na kwa sasa tumefika wale watu ambapo wameshapona kwa hii virusi, idadi yao sasa imefika 3,068. Healthcare workers wetu ambapo wanafanya kazi safi sana, tunataka congratulate kwa kazi ambapo wanafanya kule kwa wakati hii. Pia tunataka kueleza leo tumepoteza watu 7 kwa hiyo ugonjwa, na inaleta ile idadi ya watu ambapo wameshafariki kwenye hii ugonjwa kuwa 209. Tunatuma rambirambi zetu kwa wale watu ambapo wamepoteza watu wao. Finally, I once again want to thank our healthcare workers for the great work they are doing in our various health facilities, especially during this very difficult time of this pandemic. I cannot have better words to thank them other than assure them of the continued support and cooperation from the ministry as they undertake this noble duty. Asanteni sana.
Raquel Mugai from Citizen TV. The National Treasury and the Ministry of ICT headquarters have had to scale down their workforce after some staff members tested positive. These staff members worked at Teleposta Towers, which houses the Ministry of ICT. So basically, what is the testing in these offices, as well as what is the government strategy in trying to reduce the transmission of the virus in public offices? And finally, is Kenya playing a role in a global effort of finding a vaccine, given that the Moderna vaccine is moving to its final trial in the next few weeks?
Thank you. My name is Genya Kirari from NTV. I'd like to inquire about the efficacy of the testing kits that are being used in the country. We know a majority of them are those that were given by China, and India rejected a few of those sample kits, so I'd like to know if the efficacy is up to date. Another question is, what is the status of the backlog of the samples being tested? Are we truly up to date with testing, or especially after issues such as the reagents not being able to be found? and the gap in the testing at the end of June? And then lastly, what is the future of sports in the country? We know right now it's a tricky time to return back to sports, but what is being done to compensate the sportsmen and women in the country? Thank you.
Emmanuel To kutoka runinga ya KTN News. Swali moja tu. Je, kuna wahudumu wa afya walio katika hospitali ya Mama Lucy ambao wameweza kuambukizwa ugonjwa wa corona? Kunao ama hawapo? Asante.
Nancy Okware kutoka KBC. Swali langu la kwanza ni kuhusiana na hali ilivyo kufikia sasa katika hospitali ya Pumwani. Je, ni hatua zipi zaidi ambazo zimechukuliwa ili kuhakikisha kwamba shughuli za kawaida zinarejelewa ili Wakenya wasio wanapata matatizo wanapokwenda pale? Na mwisho kabisa, ningependa kufahamu kuhusiana na wale wagonjwa ambao wamepona kutokana na virusi vya corona humu nchini. Je, wanapoondoka pale hospitalini ni kipi ambacho kama wizara huwa mnawaambia, manake wamo katika hatari vilevile ya kuambukizwa virusi vya corona? Je, ujumbe upi ambao huwa mnawapa, pengine chakula ambacho wanastahili kula? Je, huo mtindo umezingatiwa humu nchini? Na vilevile kumekuwa na wale ambao wamepata virusi vya corona kwa mara ya pili baada ya kupona. Shukran.
Thank you. Zainab Mohammed, TV47. What are the projections in terms of infections in the coming days, seeing that we are seeing a rise of numbers every single day? Number two, we have seen a rise in the number of state agencies reporting positive cases. Is this a concern to the ministry? The last one, why can't NHIF cater for testing, especially for the hoteliers? Thank you.
Can you repeat your last part, please?
Why can't NHIF cater for testing, especially for hoteliers?
NHIF.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. This is quite a series of questions. Some of them I will respond to, others my technical support team will respond to them. Rachel, Citizen, your question was regarding the ICT ministry, and particularly at Teleposta Towers, what's happening there in terms of staffers there who are said to have tested positive, and what are we doing about public officers and public offices where people are turning positive? The first part of your question. Let me respond to that. At this time and period when we are beginning to see that our numbers are increasing, as you know, we have evolved through this pandemic and through our trajectory. In the beginning, we were dealing with mainly protecting ourselves from imported cases of COVID-19, because the COVID-19 came from somewhere. It had to come from outside. You remember we had our first case of an individual who originated from the US, passed through London. So that effort continued to protect the country by making sure that those coming in do not bring in the virus, and hence all those measures that we put in place, the cessation of air travel and so on. But once the virus came into the country, there has been transmission, human-to-human transmission, and what we call community transmission establishing itself. And for a while now, we have had community transmission, because you can see we now have transmission of the virus in 42 out of our 47 counties, which means that we now have well-established local transmission or community transmission of the virus. And then, given that, therefore, it is going to find its place in many places. The virus will find itself in many places. Public offices, high offices are not an exception. We will continue to see many different places where we will find that there are cases of infection, that there is spread of infection, and we need to be able to move in quickly and try to stop that spread of infection. So if we have today infection cases at the ICT offices, I think it is not a matter of surprise. It is an expectation of the spread of this virus that we will continue to see it, but we must take the right action to try to contain it, to stop it by going in there quickly, identifying the scale of spread of the infection, identifying the people who are infected, and being able to contain them so that they do not spread the virus any further. So I think that answers to the question that going forward, the virus will show up its ugly face in many different places, and we should be ready for that. We're going to see that, and we should be ready for it. The second question was to do with our role as a country in the vaccine tests that are going around the world, that are going on in the world. Yes, there is a lot of effort globally on trying to find a quick preventive agent against this virus. There's a lot of hope that is hinged on discovery of a vaccine that works. That would be good, but vaccine discovery and vaccine takes a long time. However, there is a lot of effort in fast-tracking this, and I know that there are more than 200 different efforts globally at vaccines, but only a handful of them have reached a point where they are being moved forward with some level of promise. The vaccine that you may have talked about, where we as Kenya might be involved in, is a vaccine that is being tested out of Oxford University, and one of our institutions, the Kemri Wellcome Trust Institution, is involved in that trial. It hasn't yet begun here in Kenya, but there are indications that we will be involved at some point in assessing the efficacy of this vaccine. And when that time comes, we will let you know. But there is a procedure and a process for us to go through before we accept to be involved in a trial of a vaccine or any therapeutic product for that reason. And we have the structures and necessary review boards that look at that. Gina of NTV, your question was regarding the efficacy of our testing kits, and you also cast aspersion on the donations we received from China, which you say some places rejected them. Let me speak on the issue of donations. The very early tests that we did, and for a long time, for quite a while after that, that supported our testing effort, were donations that we received from the Jack Ma Foundation. Those test kits were tested and evaluated in our labs, and they were found to be fit for the purpose. And in fact, were it not for those kits that we had at that time as a donation, we would not have made the progress that we have made in our testing capability. I think that donation made a big difference in our testing program, and we want to say that we do appreciate that donation that came from Jack Ma through the Africa CDC and other efforts, and it worked for us. There are many donations that have come around, and when you talk about testing, we need to be very specific about what type of testing we are talking about. The standard gold testing technique is what we have said repeatedly here, real-time PCR, and that's what we use in this country as our confirmatory test for PCR, for coronavirus. Those kits that we obtained are for this test, and they worked for us. I don't know what the nature of the tests that were donated in a place like India and that were rejected were. They could very well have been some of these other non-standard tests, such as the rapid diagnostic tests that we spoke about before. But those donations have helped us. Again, I want to say that yes, donations, when they come, must also be put to scrutiny to see that they meet our standards. As long as they meet our standards and support our effort, we welcome them. The status of backlog of samples, maybe the DG might talk on that, but I do know that over the last several weeks now, we have had enough testing kits, more than 182,000 kits that we have had over the last 3-4 weeks. You have seen the scale of testing that we have been carrying out. more than 4,000, 5,000, 7,000 tests sometimes over 24 hours. That indicates that we have had these reagents and we are able to continue with that testing. And I believe that we must by now have worked through whatever backlog that we may have had in those tests. Remember also that we have two different platforms for testing. We have what we call the high throughput automated systems that use a different set of testing kits, and then we have the manual systems that use another separate set of kits. So at any one time, it could be possible that we may not have enough of one set, but we may have sufficient of the other. And finally, your question was regarding the future of sports in the country. Well, you know, we can see we have opened up in certain sectors of the economy. Sports contributes to our economy. It also contributes to the well-being of our people. And clearly, we must do what we can to try to get our sports system working again. In many parts of the world, sports activities have opened up. And it depends on the nature of sport that we're talking about. I see no problem with those individuals, no contact type of sports. And I think that is happening in many places. Ours is largely an area where we excel in the area of athletics. Athletics are individual sports, mostly non-contact. We would like to see a situation where our athletes can go out there and compete and bring fame and glory to our country. And I think we will work on that to see that that happens. As for sports that draw gatherings and public gatherings and contact sports, I think those considerations of whether it's possible to allow those sports to continue without endangering those that the fans that go and watch these sports needs to be considered very carefully along the lines of the procedures and protocols that we have put in place. KTN, you also talked about Huduma, you talked about healthcare workers being affected in Mama Lucy Hospital. I think I have addressed the issue of us seeing that we will find infections springing up in many different places. So I will not dwell on that anymore. Nancy Okwaro, you asked about Pumwani, what is happening in Pumwani, and what actions are we taking as government. You also wanted to know how do we deal with those who have recovered from the virus, and what kind of advice do we provide them as they recover and leave the hospital. Dr. Ahmad, since he was there yesterday, I think we'll talk a little bit about what's happening in Pumwani and the actions that we have taken. But with regard to those who recover, we do what is required according to protocol, and that is recoveries are based on release from hospital once we have established that those individuals have fully recovered. In terms of if they had any clinical symptoms, that those clinical symptoms and conditions have resolved themselves, but really that they no longer have the virus in their system. So we have to test them to ensure that they are virus-free by the time they are being released out of a health facility. And that ensures, therefore, the issue of them being able to transmit the virus does not arise because they are only released once they are free of the virus. The advice that they are given that this is a new disease that has, I think in recent days we have seen that we are beginning to get much more information on the pathophysiology of the disease, how it affects different parts of the body, the long-term effects of the disease on certain functions of the body. I think we are incorporating all that, taking it up, and we are ensuring that these people whom we release, we give them the right advice, we ask them what to watch out for, and we give them the necessary advice in terms of how to keep themselves healthy, how to keep themselves virus-free, and how not to be in a position where, in the event that so that they get reinfected. We don't even know whether people who have, with any certainty, and I know that question was asked, we do not know with any certainty whether people who have recovered from coronavirus get reinfected again. There may have been some cases here and there reported, but it cannot be said with certainty, and there isn't enough evidence base to be able to tell whether people who actually recover from the virus stand a chance of being reinfected. This is an area of intense research because it is important to know. It's important to know the immune response mounted by individuals against the virus and how long that protection lasts. These are important things to understand the epidemiology of the virus, because once you understand that, then you can develop strategies on how to stop transmission. So that is an evolving area of knowledge, and we look forward as this knowledge base increases to come up with some indication on how to deal with the virus. Projections, the last person to ask a question wanted to know projections of infections in the coming days, the increased number of cases in state agencies, I think I have addressed that, and whether NHIF can cover the costs for testing, especially for restaurant workers. In terms of projections of infections in the coming days, I think we are seeing, and we have said that a time will come when our numbers will rise. As we approach the steep incline of our curve, as we approach closer to our peak, and our projections by our experts using different modeling techniques have indicated that we may be approaching our curve sometime in August or September. So far, the rises that we are seeing seem to be consistent with that, and therefore I think we'll wait and see. But we know that projections sometimes do not bear the truth. That will wait to be seen. But clearly we are seeing the number of cases increase. The numbers that we have been announcing in terms of those that are positive from the total samples, the rate of positivity seems also to be increasing, an indication of increasing numbers of people who are infected. So we'll continue to see that. NHIF covering the costs of testing. I think it's not only NHIF, the entire insurance industry, I think, is in a situation where they have now to look at and review their policies, because coronavirus was not there before. It was not there when the policies were set and the exclusions and inclusions were set. I think it's a process now of reviewing this and seeing what it means, what the implications are in terms of cost, and what can be covered. But I can tell you that these discussions are ongoing, not only with NHIF, but also in the private insurance industry. I will now hand over to Dr. Amoth, maybe to respond to some of the questions that had been raised. Dr. Amoth.
Thank you, Waziri. Let me start with the last one of additional information in terms of the projections. As Waziri has clearly stated, is that the numbers will increase as we approach our peak. And if the numbers increase, of course, even the deaths will significantly increase. But more worrying, of course, is deaths, especially in those without coexisting medical conditions. Like for today, we have reported 7 deaths. Out of these, there are 2 people who didn't have any coexisting medical indication or condition. So that is usually a source of worry for us, because then it means either the infection is they are getting a more serious form of the infection, which therefore means that we need to be able to warn the young people that not everybody who gets COVID, you could be that unlucky person who gets a more serious form of COVID-19 and therefore succumb to it. So it is imperative that the young people take these precautions very, very seriously. Initially, in early phase of the disease, you remember most of the people who died had coexisting medical conditions. But also as the numbers rise, the healthcare system, in line with the directive of His Excellency the President, that each county establishes a 300-bed isolation facility, a number that very many counties have indeed exceeded. The healthcare system has been resilient and people are still able to get services. So we are pleased that on the 10th day following the lifting of the restriction of movement, so far the healthcare system has responded very, very well. As of today, we have 1,049 people admitted across hospitals in the width and breadth of this country. And out of these, 39 are in ICU, with 21 of them under ventilatory support, meaning we are breathing for them through machines, and 18 requiring supplemental oxygen. So the number has not changed significantly in the past 3 days. So we hope that scenario will obtain going forward. There was a question in terms of sports, which Waziri has also articulated too, but CS Mina Mohammed, CS for Sports, has formed a task force to which MOH is a member to be able to provide technical expertise in development of protocols and guidelines that will enable us to resume sports activities while assuring safety, public health safety of the Kenyan people and the individual athletes. There was a question of Pumwani. Yes, yesterday I was in Pumwani with my dear sister to my left, and on a fact-finding mission, and we indicated that 41 out of 290 healthcare workers had tested positive for COVID-19. 2 had subsequently recovered and been removed from isolation, but 39 were still on home-based care isolation in various places in Nairobi. And the support that the ministry has extended to them includes, in our meeting yesterday, the need for further capacity building and sensitization of the healthcare workers on case management, provision of additional personal protective equipment for safety of the healthcare workers as they deliver on their mandate. We are also ramping up infection prevention control guidelines in the hospital, the issues of hand washing, use of sanitizers, masking, and of course physical and social distance, including closure of common areas where healthcare workers tended to gather, like the tea room near the labor ward. The hospital has also, in conjunction with Nairobi Metropolitan Services, established an isolation facility for healthcare workers who may not qualify for home-based care, and of course will continue to offer them continued psychosocial support during this difficult period. But of note is that these 39 in Pumwani, none of them were symptomatic and none of them had any underlying medical condition. So we are very, very hopeful that they'll be able to pull through. Yesterday and today, again, we commenced testing of the remaining 100 healthcare workers, so the total complement of about 390 healthcare workers in that institution will be tested for COVID-19, and the same measures will apply in case anybody turns positive. The issue of recoveries, I think Waziri addressed that very, very conclusively. But also to be able to add to that is, of course, we continue to offer them psychosocial support, advice on nutrition, the kind of foods to eat, and of course the need to maintain other infection prevention control measures that apply to all of us. The status of backlog, yes, again I want to confirm we don't have any backlog of cases, because in the past 3-4 weeks we have had sufficient quantities of test kits and reagents, and therefore we have tested as we pick the samples. But as countries move on again to reimpose restrictions, like what is happening in America, going forward there could potentially be challenges in terms of acquisition of these important commodities. So we could again get into headwinds going forward. but we'll always do our best as a government to ensure that our testing is sustained. There was a question of the vaccines. Yes, something exciting coming from Moderna, which is a biotechnology company in America, using a totally new approach to development of vaccines. They're using part of the virus, inject it into your body, and that particle is called mRNA, messenger RNA, which stimulates the production or formation of a protein that is found in corona called a spike protein. This spike protein is like a pin that enables it to attach to and infect the other cells. So once it infects the other cells, then your body naturally, because this is a foreign antigen or a foreign body, produces an immune reaction leading to formation of antibodies. And it is this that we need, because these antibodies then, if you form them in sufficient quantities, if you then get into contact with the real coronavirus, then the antibodies will be able to neutralize it and prevent you from getting infection. So this Moderna vaccine has gone through phase 1, where it was tested in just a small number of people to look at 2 issues. One is safety, and of course number 2 is whether you develop an immune reaction if you are given the vaccine. And out of the 45 people who are given the vaccines, all of them developed an immune reaction. They produce antibodies. Of course, the highest antibody production was noted in the last group, which was given a higher dose of 250 micrograms. But also because of the higher dose, they experienced the greatest side effects, including headache, muscle pain or myalgia, fever, nausea, and delirium. So going forward, a 250 microgram dose will be pulled off as we go to phase 2, where we are now going to test the vaccine in thousands of people. You remember we started with 45 in batches of 15. So now we can go into hundreds and thousands. Then in phase 3, we continue again to monitor for safety and immune reaction in hundreds of thousands. So this going forward is good progress, but again with a caution that even if you are to get the virus, of course, probably the people in the first world will be able to access it first before it comes to the developing world. And you have seen the kind of protectionist measures that the countries have put in place. So we think going forward some countries will insist on those tendencies. But the natural best thing to do once you develop the vaccine is to avail it to everybody. Because corona anywhere is corona everywhere. I think that is all for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Amot. I want to make a correction. Nimeelezwa ya kwamba wakati nilikuwa nikisema wale ambapo tumetest ni 4,261. Niambiwa nilisema 1,400. 4,261. Anyway, you will be getting the statistics and the document here with the correct figures. Thank you very much. What we want to do next is we have some innovators, local innovators here who have come up with some innovation which we want to test and see how this innovation works. And we want to encourage our people to use their abilities and innovation and come up with products and ways in which we can support the COVID response. Thank you.
as the former leader of majority. So sometimes you see your hair is falling very fast. Sometimes you see your hair turns gray very fast. Not because of something else, but because of the office. So I'm sure, I'm told, Honorable, the former Auditor General. And the Speaker, there are certain offices in this country, independent offices, the office of the DPP, the office of the Auditor General, the office of team and men and women who work at the EACC, the Inspector General of Police. Those are offices that, in one way or the other, they will make decisions that will not make everybody very happy. And they say it, Mr. Speaker, that if you want to please everybody, then the best job for you is to sell ice cream. So, Janet, you are lucky because we will not see how your hair will fall. Maybe you will cover with a scarf. Honorable Janet Ogera, my very old friend, she served me very well when I was in ODM as our executive director. She's telling me I'm growing young. Yes, because now I have time for my family and my children, and I sleep well. So Honorable Kimunya has made my life a bit easier, and I always pray for him. So, Mr. Speaker, Edward Ouko, and let's be very frank, Edward Ouko was a very good auditor. But Edward Ouko went through hell. He was even dragged to this parliament through a petition. But I'm sure when history will be written down, many of us even had issues with him. You remember the Eurobond. Edward Ouko was a man who had many issues, particularly with the Jubilee administration in which I am part of. But because of the nature of the office, just like that of the DPP and other independent offices, Edward Ouko or the Auditor General has to make one decision either way, and it will not impress everybody. So, Mr. Speaker, we want to thank him. And on moving today, after a long wait, we finally now have a new Auditor General. And I had a chance to look at the report of the Committee of Finance, and I must say that Madam Nancy is cut out for her job. Having worked at the office of the Auditor General in various positions, she doesn't only hold extensive knowledge of audit, but once appointed, she will require each and every person who works at the office of the Auditor General. And it is very, very true. There are 5 of her colleagues senior than her, senior deputy auditor generals who applied for the same job, but because of the Almighty God, she won that seat. So it's her responsibility now as a leader of the audit office. I can't hear what Honorable Junet is saying, the Speaker. Yeah, you know, Honorable Junet, the Almighty speaks to those who are in the panelist. Those of us who believe in God, He doesn't need to speak to. He speaks to those who are conducting the interview. He speaks to their heart. So they make you number one. But now, she must work with her former colleagues, her seniors, and she must have a teamwork. Because that office is very, very key. The Speaker, it's very important for this nation, and as members may be aware that there are so many audit reports that have been pending for being unsigned. You know, legally, just like the DPP and the Auditor General, it is it's a constitutional obligation that it's only them to sign. So if the office of the DPP becomes vacant, if the office of the Auditor General becomes vacant, then we have to wait. So we must amend the Audit Act, we must amend the Constitution, if that has to be, to make sure that we create a transitional mechanism that 6 months, 8 months to the exit of the Auditor General, because they have a tenure of office, that the recruitment process starts. because Parliament cannot wait. It's very, very clear, Mr. Speaker, in the Constitution that within 6 months after the end of each financial year, the Auditor General shall audit and report in respect of the previous financial year. Even there's a timeline on how he's going to report to Parliament, to the National Assembly, for the national government, the judiciary and Parliament, and other institutions, and for the Senate in terms of the county. Janet is not getting this job because she's a woman. You know, there's a problem in this country, Mr. Speaker, that even when a woman, state or public officer is involved in corruption, the gender card is raised. But when they're getting jobs, we are appointing them, why is it that the gender card is not raised? Women steal the way men can steal. So when we are appointing Janet, we are not giving Janet because she's a woman. We expect Janet to comply with the provisions of the Constitution and become the best Auditor General after 8 years. And we expect that to profile the gender issue, that women can do better. But Mr. Speaker, we will not expect Janet to go and cover up for her colleagues in the other gender if they're involved in corruption. Mr. Speaker, the Office of the Auditor General, as currently constituted in Article 29, has been effective, and however, there's much we can do. So, Speaker, through you as the Chairman of the Parliament Service Commission, I think we have the Budget Office in our Parliament, the National Assembly has done very well. We will go further and have an audit office within Parliament, so that we don't only depend, and now I'm a member of the Public Accounts Committee, we don't only depend on the auditors from the Auditor General. You cannot come and advise us on your own report. So we need to go further and have an independent audit office within Parliament that can advise.
1 minute to conclude.
Just to make sure that we get an independent office. Mr. Speaker, that is that, and as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, allow me to wish the nominee all the best as she takes up her new role as an Auditor General. And Mr. Speaker, there's a saying, and I'm sure Amos, because he was the chair of ISPAC, will agree with me, there's a saying out there that women make the best accountants. But allow me to amend this afternoon and say, women make the best auditors, and ask the House to approve Janet Nancy. I don't know why she has two Christian names. Oh, she's Catholic, okay. And the Speaker, next time I think we should not bother about where she was born. You know, I was wondering why the Vice Chair was saying she's born in Kisumu, unless he would tell us whether he was sending a message. We know where Janet comes from. It's not in doubt. I was also born somewhere outside Northeastern. Honorable Junet was born in Mandera, but he's a member of Parliament for Migori. So, but we wish Janet very well, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, the Public Accounts Committee and the Public Investment will now work efficiently to make sure that the pending issues are resolved. I beg to support.
Member for Suna East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this motion, Mr. Speaker. And the onset, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion. Mr. Speaker, this office of the Auditor General is one of the most important offices in the structure of governance of our country, Mr. Speaker. And we have taken quite some time from the time the previous auditor retired and up to now, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is a reason why under the Constitution of 2010, Kenyans decided to make this office a constitutional office, an independent constitutional office, Mr. Speaker. As you remember very well, previously, it used to be called Controller and Auditor Office. But now, under the new constitution, the two offices were separated. We had the Auditor General's office, and we have the Controller of Budget office, which were both made constitutional offices, Mr. Speaker. That tells you how important this office is, Mr. Speaker. One of the things that I have been raising and saying that if you want to fight corruption in this country, Mr. Speaker, you just need to look at the report of the Auditor General presented to Parliament, Mr. Speaker. As much as it has to go through a process in the Public Accounts Committee, but after it is processed through the Public Accounts Committee, that final report of the Public Accounts Committee, Mr. Speaker, gives the final verdict on the report of the Auditor General. And if that report of Public Accounts Committee was to be implemented successfully, Mr. Speaker, this country will have saved a lot of money, Mr. Speaker. The Auditor General that we had the last 8 years, Mr. Speaker, performed very well. He did a good job, he did a fantastic job. He stepped on many toes, Mr. Speaker, and people didn't feel good about what he was doing. But in the end, Mr. Speaker, he left office with his head high up, Mr. Speaker, because he has done his job in accordance with the Constitution and the law, Mr. Speaker. And I hope the new nominee, Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt, will follow suit and she will do a good job, because from the report of the committee, I am convinced that she is capable of doing a good job. She has the capacity and she has all the required qualifications for her to do a good job, Mr. Speaker, in that office. Mr. Speaker, what worries me a lot is these new constitutional offices that have been created by the Constitution, which we cannot say anymore the new Constitution because it is old. That's why we want even now to do amendments, because it has become old for 10 years. Mr. Speaker, when somebody is appointed to that office and he serves for 8 years, which is non-renewable, Mr. Speaker, where does that person go to? For example, today, you are appointed an Auditor General who is 45 years old, and you tell him to serve for 8 years, non-renewable. After that, where does he go? And somebody is supposed to retire at 60 years old. So, Mr. Speaker, it's very painful, because even under the retirement and benefits, there is no act that guarantees the Auditor General any benefits when he retires, Mr. Speaker. The old Auditor General who has retired has no benefits. He has no pension. He has nothing. I have met him severally, complaining to me. I have served the nation for 8 good years. I have done a good job. I have saved this country billions of shillings through my audit job. Mr. Speaker, after he has retired, he has no benefits at all. He has no pension. He has not been covered under any law on how he's going to retire. Now, if you are 45 years, as I said earlier, and you become an Auditor General, after 8 years you retire, you leave office. It's not renewable. What are you supposed to do, Mr. Speaker? To hang around here drinking in bars? Mr. Speaker, that matter must be addressed. I think it's an oversight that people didn't look at the beginning when the new constitution took effect, Mr. Speaker. Every officer who has served this country, especially at the level of Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, who has stepped on many toes, Mr. Speaker, who has unearthed many scandals, who has saved this country a lot of money, must get a suitable retirement package, Mr. Speaker, at the end of his term. That is my plea, and this House must raise to that occasion, Mr. Speaker. Because even this lady now who has been given this job, after 8 years she's going to retire like the other one. Another one will come, another one will come. So are we going to have an auditor do for us a good job, save us a lot of money, then we just send him home with nothing, Mr. Speaker? Finally, Mr. Speaker, I have served in the Public Accounts Committee now for some time. Mr. Speaker, the audit, when the Auditor General's office was made a constitutional office, was given independence, Mr. Speaker, I can tell without the fear of contradiction that that office has done a fantastic job, Mr. Speaker. You may not agree with what he's saying, you may not agree with what he reports, but Mr. Speaker, it was my view that there is no need, even sometimes when we are passing the budget here or the preparation, I feel sometimes that any ministry or any PS who has audit queries must not be given more money until he clarifies how that audit query happened or is resolved, Mr. Speaker. Because you cannot keep on carrying audit queries from one year to another year and you keep on being given more money, Mr. Speaker. Ministries which have audit queries, for example, you'll find a ministry has been given a budget of 50 billion. And you'll see them having a query on an amount of 15 billion from their budget. And this financial year, they appear in the budget receiving more money. That is bad accountability. The Auditor General that we have now, Mr. Speaker, looks at how you have applied the law on the use of the money, public funds. He looks at whether the law was followed. He also looks at whether there was value for money. If you look at the Auditor General's report before the Public Accounts Committee, some of the issues he raises is value for money, Mr. Speaker, which we never used to have. The Auditor General nowadays tells Parliament that this work was done, but there was no value for value for money for the public, Mr. Speaker. And PSS appear before the Public Accounts Committee to answer that query, Mr. Speaker. Value for money. So, Mr. Speaker, it is my humble opinion that we must strengthen this office as Parliament, because the Auditor General reports to Parliament. He does not report to any executive office. He directly reports to Parliament, he tables his report to Parliament, and even the auditors that audit the Auditor General's office are appointed by Parliament. That's how independent he is. He's accountable to the people who are elected by the people of the Republic of Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to say that I want to congratulate Janet for getting this job. I want to tell her that she's getting into an important office. Kenyans are looking up to her, Mr. Speaker. She must make sure that Kenyans get value for their money, because the amount of money, someone was saying that we have a budget of 3 trillion. And he's saying every year we lose a third. I don't know how that happens, but if that is true, she's the right person who can confirm whether that is true or not true, Mr. Speaker, because she's the Auditor General of the budget of 3 trillion every year, Mr. Speaker. Those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support.
Member for Suba North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also want to join the honorable members in supporting the nomination of Madam Nancy to this position. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to say that it's going to be a tough call for her, filling in the shoes of Edward Ouko, who's done a very good job. But going by her CV, Mr. Speaker, I am very, very sure that she will do very well. I want to just say, Mr. Speaker, because a lot of accolades has been said her way, that there are certain pertinent issues that Honorable Mbadi has raised, which especially on equitable representation in the committees, and I think there was one of the things that we agreed in this Parliament, that so that we abide by the National Cohesion and Integration Act, that we need to look at the constitutional commissions in totality before we make a decision as to the issue of their skewed appointment or not. But I think this is a conversation that as a country we need to be talking about, because there's a little bit of disquiet about the issue of representation and on key jobs. We need to have the face of Kenya. But I didn't want to say it in relation to this, because most times people like using women as the low-hanging fruits. There have been very many men who have been appointed in different positions. I am waiting for the next skewed appointment that has to do with the men, and I will come out very strongly. But because this is a woman, I know Honorable Duale has told us when he was supporting this, that we should not only look at a situation, the gender dynamics when it favors us, Mr. Speaker. But I think it's because it's only the wearer of the shoes who knows where it pinches. I am in a group of women, I think it's an online group called African Leading Ladies or something like that. And Mr. Speaker, if you actually see the CVs of the women in that group, there are women from charcoal sellers to professors. They are experts in their own respective fields. But when you actually look at the way appointments are made, it does not represent the number of women and the skills that you are seeing in that group. And this is just a very small internet group. So I'm just wondering how many more women are out there with these amazing skills that we are not recognizing. And that is why whenever we see a situation where a woman has been recognized like Nancy has, then those of us who are pushing the gender agenda are very happy. Because, Mr. Speaker, a lot of times we are being told that the Constitution now provides an equal framework. It provides an equal legal framework, but in practice, a lot of people have not internalized that we need to follow the spirit and the letter of the Constitution in appointments, especially in other appointed or appointive positions. I know when the President was doing the cabinet appointments, especially the first time, he did very well. And when he was doing the PSS, he did fairly well, not as well as he should, because we were hoping to reach the 1/3 rule. But we have not. So increasingly, when we are seeing more women occupying positions like this, and I want to really congratulate Nancy, because she's the first woman to occupy this position. And Mr. Speaker, I know because she's the first one, again, the burden that will be placed before her will be much higher. The expectation will be much higher. So I just want to encourage her that, noting that people will be looking at you from a gendered lens. We know Edward Ouko did very well, but people will not only look at you because Edward did well. They will try and see whether a woman performed equally as well as a man. So I want to encourage you to follow the Leadership and Integrity Act and make sure that you do not fear, but you do your work well. I am only hoping that as Parliament, that we do, and I'm encouraging the Leader of Majority, the way he has said that he's going to bring amendments to the relevant bill so that the transition is easier in future, so that we don't have a situation in future where we have to wait this long. But I would also want to encourage that as Parliament we put a little bit more budgetary allocation so that the office is not overwhelmed. Sometimes when the Office of the Auditor General comes to audit in our constituencies, you can see that they're actually overwhelmed. I'll give an example that one time our constituencies, and we know that MPs now don't actually have the mandate to do roads. But because of the challenges we face, sometimes we are forced to do access roads to schools or to security installations. And Mr. Speaker, we actually did one such road. And after we did it, the Office of the Auditor General came and spoke to the chief, who had no clue who has done the road. And the chief said, I think it is the county. What did the Office of the Auditor General do without even verifying? Indicate that the CDF has withdrawn money to do a road which was done by the county. Yet, Mr. Speaker, I think it's an open secret who is likely to have done that road. If you just ask at random anybody, who is likely, if you go and say this road was done, who is likely to have done it, whether it's CDF or the county? I mean, these are the things which in law we call recips a loquitur. Not by design, but by the nature of the fact that our counties are still, struggling with the systems and things like that. And because of that, sometimes, even very well-meaning governors are duped because the systems and structures that you have in CDF are still not available for the county governments. Very recently, Mr. Speaker, I chanced upon a situation where our CDF had done a health facility when we were allowed to, but when we transitioned with the new constitution, we actually handed over the facilities to the county. But most of them we handed over when they were complete. And then I am told the county government gave a lot of money, and they were making it as though they are starting afresh. So it would look like CDF has actually contributed 100,000 for a building that we have actually almost completed, and the only thing that needed to be done was probably painting. And yet now when the Auditor General comes, depending on who they find, they will be told CDF didn't do it, and then you will make it an audit query for CDF. And I think that is that area of tension the Auditor General's office must see how to deal with, so that we are not relying on one person or two people to make a decision, especially when we know that now we have different layers of project implementation from national government to county governments. And Mr. Speaker, I think in concluding, I just want to say also that I want to thank Mzalendo for acknowledging the work that I've done in this parliament. But I know Mzalendo has acknowledged many people before. Oh, congratulations. My brother was number 2. Mr. Speaker, I think some people were asking, I know there was somebody who did an analysis that member questioned because it was more subjective. But when Mzalendo goes into the Hansard to find out whether you contribute or not, it cannot be subjective. Anybody in doubt can also go to the Hansard and confirm. But that is not my concern or my worry. There are members who may speak twice or 3 times, but they speak a lot of substance. My concern, Mr. Speaker, is the number of people who are educated, some members of the public who are educated, who are very ignorant about the operations of Parliament. That you find somebody asking you why you speak in Parliament. They expect her to come and dance in Parliament. We are elected to come into Parliament to speak and represent our people and represent the concerns of our people. Like now I'm representing the women of this country when I'm speaking strongly to the issue of appointment of Nancy and urging the government to appoint more women. You expect me to speak that in your house or where? That is why I was elected number 1, legislation. And I am very proud that I'm doing my work and I'm doing it excellent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Ainabkoi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I want to congratulate Nancy, Janet, Kabue, Kathuku. On the onset, Mr. Speaker, I've been telling you, and I want to repeat, that you are a gentle giant. You are one of the extraordinary speakers Kenya have seen. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a professional. She has extensive experience in audit. Actually, our leader, Honorable Hamos Kimunya, mentioned that she has 27 years serving in audit. And again, I want to tell this Honorable House that as much as Nancy comes from Central Province, she happens to be my relative. She is married. Her sister is married to my cousin. So Kenya is a great country. We are all intermarried. So having said that, I want to say today that Nancy, she is one of the persons who has had experience, and having said that, she has passed all the requirements according to Article 229 and 118, public participation, public Committee of Finance and Planning, Honorable the Vice Chair, when he was tabling, he said that she passed all the examination. So, Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt in my mind that we want value for our money. Accountability is the basis of any meaningful achievement. Actually, it is 1 year that our country has not been, the books of account has not been examined. Honorable Leader, can you work with speed, because you've told this Honorable House that you've taken undertaking that you are going to negotiate with the executive to bring amendments in this House so that come 2027, there will be transition. Madam Grace, you are given number 1 in Mzalendo. I was given again a present for contributing the motion of planting of trees is compulsory in all learning institutions and individual household. Because I had to mention that because, Honorable Speaker, I always speak, and I always, today, Honorable Leader, people are questioning that why is Chief Good given, I'm only serving in one committee. Then I was given one, and I was a DO, I was a DC. So what's wrong? Loyalty pays and humility pays. If you are loyal, you must be rewarded. So what's the problem? I'm competent. Yes, and I'm consistent in my performing my legislation, representation, and so what's the problem? Sophie, Honorable Leader, I have no doubt in my mind, Leader, that this Nancy, she's competent, she's capable, she will deliver, so let's approve with speed. There's no problem. After all, she's a lady, and she's balancing gender parity in this republic. So the issue of saying gender and so on and so forth, after this Nancy, she's open to constructive suggestions in this republic. She's a very objective person. So we have no doubt in our mind that she's one of the best extraordinary genius women in this republic. So I want to thank His Excellency the President for appointing a very able, suitable candidate. With those few remarks, I submit to support Mr. Speaker, sir. Thank you.
Very good, Honorable Member for Enapco. We shall now have the Honorable Makali Mulu, Member for Kitui Central.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. And I want to start by really congratulating the committee for this job well done. In a very short time, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I will listen to the chair of the committee presenting the experience and the academic qualifications of this particular nominee. And I must say, Honorable Speaker, looking at the academic qualifications, the nominee has what it takes to serve in this office. Looking at the experience, Honorable Speaker, she has been an auditor for many years. And to me, what is very encouraging is the fact that she's been promoted from within, Honorable Speaker. So we are saying she's an insider in terms of audit issues. And despite the fact that, Mr. Speaker, that she has been a bit junior compared to the other level, there's a higher level from where she was, Honorable Speaker. I think she meets what we would call minimum requirements for this position. So, Honorable Speaker, I think we must really say congratulations to the nominee and wish her well after getting appointed to this important position. But, Honorable Speaker, having said that, I think we must make these observations because they are important, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I think it's last year, towards the end of last year, the chair PIC raised the matter of the absence of a substantive Auditor General because a number of reports had to be deferred in terms of confirming. And why was this happening, Honorable Speaker? This was happening because by law, once an Auditor General leaves office, there is nobody else who can sign reports, even the ones who are acting. So it means all the reports must wait till we have a substantive Auditor General, Honorable Speaker. And I think this is a matter as a House we will need to discuss and see how we can really help that area. Because, Honorable Speaker, a situation where we have to wait till we get a substantive Auditor General, Honorable Speaker, we may end up delaying a lot of things. And when we talk about corruption in this country, we all know where we are, Honorable Speaker. So I think this office should not at any point have no substantive person in place, Honorable Speaker. So the delay, Honorable Speaker, to me, this is something we should avoid in the future.
And I really want to support those who are saying we need to come up with a legal framework to make sure that, Honorable Speaker, about 6 months to the end of the term of the sitting Auditor General, we'll have appointed another Auditor General who will just be waiting for the right time to come and then assume the office. In that case, we'll be helping this country, Honorable Speaker. The other issue I want to observe, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of recruitment process, as it was said. In a situation where, Honorable Speaker, you go through interview number 1, and people say you are not qualified, and then another interview 2, people say you are qualified. What that does, Mr. Speaker, it doesn't question the qualification of the particular candidate. It questions those who are carrying out the process. And that's why I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is important that this important office, when it comes to interviews, they must be done by people who are seen to be very neutral in terms of making conclusions. We are saying, Honorable Speaker, we know it's a common practice that people would lobby for positions. But even as lobbying is done, Honorable Speaker, it is important that the process is seen to be objective, so that we don't have situations where we say today somebody is not qualified, and tomorrow you say that person is qualified. To me, that sends the wrong signals. The other issue, Honorable Speaker, is the issue which has been raised earlier, the issue of reporting. That there are 5 people who are already senior, and then she'll be reporting to them. And Mr. Speaker, people have basic human resource experience. It is your senior who does your price or reports. Those are the people who sign for you. So if I've been signing your price or report, and then tomorrow you start signing mine, you can see where it puts the situation. So we are just saying that even as you promote people, it is important to consider such situations, because in a normal circumstance, what would happen is then the best situation would be those who are senior than us would have to leave that organization, so that then you get that good working relationship. But anyway, I know she's qualified, so she'll have to get a way of making sure that the working environment really remains friendly to even those who have been senior to her and now will be reporting to her. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, is that as a result of having no substantive Auditor General, there are very many reports which are now not signed and are going to await our signature. And the question is, Honorable Speaker, at times when you are at that level, and you know in Kenya very well, everybody would want really to familiarize yourself with all those reports before you sign. So I'm imagining if she was to sit and look at all these reports before she signs, then there could be another delay in terms of having these reports come to this House. And Honorable Speaker, you know very well that PAC, which is the Parliamentary Accounts Committee, PIC, which is the Parliamentary Investment Committee, and the Special Funds Committees really will not have much work unless these reports are signed and submitted to this House. So we are saying, Honorable Speaker, there must be a balancing act where even as she tries to ensure that she's signing the right documentation, then she doesn't take a lot of time to sign, and then that will lead to unnecessary delay. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, is that even as she assumes office, I think now this office has grown, it has very many staff members. And at times I've heard, Honorable Speaker, Kenyans also complaining about the Auditor General office having also some bad elements in there. So even as we talk about corruption in the other sectors of the country, corruption cannot be ruled out in that particular important office. So the nominee will also have an assignment to make sure that issues of corruption in that particular office are also addressed as issues of corruption have been addressed in other areas. Because they audit everybody, and really it would be very unfair to have reports saying Kenyans are losing a lot of the budget to misdirection or misappropriation or corruption-related matters, and then you find that we are also contributing to that. So, Honorable Speaker, I want to say this. The job of this nominee is well cut. That is a must. And the previous occupants of this office, Honorable Speaker, we used to have a Mr. Mwai during the Kanu era, who did a good job despite all those difficult times. Then we have Ouko, who was just now, who has exceeded, who has also done a good job. We expect this nominee also to do a good job. But one thing she must really do is that, as now she awaits nomination, she can pledge her loyalty to anybody. But once the appointment is pronounced, Honorable Speaker, she can only pledge her loyalty to the Constitution of this country. In that case, then, she will do her work objectively, without fear or favor, and in that case, then, Kenyans will get value for money. Why am I saying this, Honorable Speaker? Honorable Speaker, I believe this country has resources which, if properly managed, the so-called prudent management of public resources, we can actually meet most of our development needs, and we can also meet most of our recurrent needs. And the only office which can ensure that prudent management of this public resources is done, Honorable Speaker, is this particular nominee once she assumes office. So I want to wish her well. As Kenyans, it's important we pray for her, because it's not a bed. She's not going to join this office and then things just be smooth. Things are going to get rough as you move. We are aware corruption fights back, so she must be ready that when corruption starts fighting back, she must be able to stand firm and make sure that she doesn't do reports which are in any way interfered with by anybody. So with those remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to support and wish this particular nominee well. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Very well spoken, the Honorable Dr. Makali. We shall now have contribution from the Honorable Kandie, member for Baringo Central. The Honorable Kandie seems not to be in the House. We shall now have contribution from the Honorable Kimani Kuria, member for Modo.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to contribute towards this motion. I sit in the Finance and National Planning Committee that approved this nominee. A lot of things have been said, Mr. Speaker, on the floor of this House, and I'd just like to highlight a few. That this nominee makes us realize that Kenyans are not opposed to women leadership, that Kenyans are not opposed to even youth leadership, but Kenyans want competent people into these respective positions. So when I've heard the contributions on the floor of this House, Mr. Speaker, it has not been a gender, it has not been based on the gender and say we are approving her because she's a woman. We are approving CPA Janet because she is competent, she's qualified, and she's going to make a great Auditor General. And probably, when we skew this discussion about women in leadership, and not just say that we want more women in power, we want more women in leadership, but we want great people in leadership positions. If they are men, well and good. If they are women, even better. If they are young people, even much better. Then we will have even achieved the constitutional requirement of 2/3 of one gender should not be in any public office, Mr. Speaker. I saw a very consistent Kenyan who rose from the position of an auditor of provincial schools. And I tell you, Mr. Speaker, being an accountant myself, being a CPA myself, to have someone go through those leadership, go through that audit experience, from auditing schools in the villages all the way to now Auditor General, this is a great sense of hope to Kenyans that yes, you do not have to come from a particular family, you don't need to come from a particular big farm to lead in this country. Because we've seen somebody who is not from, when looking at the CV, I didn't even see her having worked with any of the big four accounting firms, because, Mr. Speaker, in the accounting profession, those people that work with the Deloitte and Touche and Young and all those PwC and those great companies are regarded probably as even having posh jobs than other auditors in other departments. But you've seen somebody, despite not having that international experience, who is rising from that low level of audit all the way to the Auditor General as a great source of hope to people.
Honorable Sankok, the Honorable Kimani, just hold on a second. The Honorable Sankok seems to have a point of order.
Honorable Speaker,
I think we are leaders and we should lead by example. Wearing of mask is the Ministry of Health guidelines. And if we are in public and not wearing mask, what message are we sending to Kenyans? And I'm speaking from the medical experience. Honorable Speaker, leaders should lead by example by putting on masks. So thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. He's actually out of order.
The Honorable Sankok, who is not wearing a mask? The Honorable Kimani seems to have one. But if he was not wearing one, Honorable members, I think the Honorable Sankok is very, very well grounded in raising that point of order. This is a matter that is absolutely of supreme importance to all of us, that we should keep on these masks. Because this thing called COVID has got it does not forgive anyone. Let us just try to keep it out of our way as much as possible. The Honorable Kimani, proceed and complete your submissions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But now that you say that, the discussion about wearing a mask or not, to the best of my knowledge, I thought we were maintaining good social distancing, and therefore there is no risk of me spreading the virus to anyone around here. And Mr. Speaker, now that you said that, even some of us that seem to be wearing it are wearing them as kidevu, quote unquote, and not necessarily as proper as it should be. But I stand guided, Mr. Speaker. There has been a discussion, Mr. Speaker, about when these positions fall vacant, how long do we take before we fill them? Today we are sitting to approve this Auditor General, and whereas this position has stayed without someone filling this position for, I think, almost a year. And Mr. Speaker, we have seen this even in other government offices. To the best of my knowledge, Mr. Speaker, the office of the Ombudsman, for example, has the immediate former leader of that institution as the Honorable Otiende Amolo. I am not sure whether that office has had somebody to be nominated to continue that position. So what does this mean, Mr. Speaker? That this House needs to come up with legislation that ensures that these positions are filled when and they fall vacant. I have given this example before, Mr. Speaker. We saw an institution like Safaricom appointing a CEO who will report to office a year after the appointment. Whereas as in government, we are approving people in positions as serious and as senior as that of the Office of the Auditor General 1 year after.
The Honorable Kimani, you seem to be attracting a lot of interest. The Honorable Member for Kikuyu seems to have a point of order. What's out of order, the Honorable Ishuma?
Honorable Speaker, thank you. And I didn't want to interrupt because I also see the immediate former ombudsman is seated here, the Honorable Otiende Amolo. But the member mentioned that there has not been a substantive holder of that office, which this being a house of records, it is only right that we put the record straight, whether or not. Maybe he meant to insinuate that the current holder may not be seen as much as the former office holder is seen, but there is indeed an ombudsman in the name of the former member for Meru, Honorable Kajuju, who is the current ombudsman. So just for record, Honorable Speaker, maybe it's good to put that fact in place, that there is indeed a substantive holder of that office. Maybe it's to encourage the current holder to be as active as the Honorable Otiende Amolo in safeguarding public interest, and to be seen more, to be safeguarding public interest. And maybe that way Kenyans will know there is indeed an office holder.
Kimani, you have made your point, and you are absolutely right. There's a substantive holder of that office, the Honorable Dr. Otiende Amolo, being the emeritus holder of that important office. But I am confident that my senior, the Honorable Kajuju, former member for Meru, is also doing a good job, and that when the time comes, when her reports come here, we shall be able to see what it is that she has done. So let us not make an issue about that, because I am sure she's doing her job and there's no complaint about how she's going about her job. The Honorable Kimani, proceed.
Mr. Speaker, the point that I was making, and I feel should not be lost, is the filling of those positions when they fall vacant. Although the Honorable Florence Kajuju is now the current ombudsman, she was only appointed, I think, last year. But the Honorable Dr. Ochendi Amolo left the office of the ombudsman, I think, in 2016, which means for several years, there was no a substantive ombudsman in that office. And that's what we're talking about. We just had, I think last year we approved the National Land Commission commissioners. How long did it take before the lapse of the term of the previous commissioners and when we appointed them? And these are things that you're saying, that as a government, we need to be as competent as the private sector in terms of ensuring that we fill these positions when they fall vacant. Because when we do not do that, then we are disadvantaging our people. We are not doing well for our country and for our economy and for our people. Because these positions are known that between this time and this term will expire and it's not renewable. So it is time for us to renew that position. Mr. Speaker, the new Auditor General, when approved by this House, will come to as a time when the country is very committed towards dealing with matters of corruption. But Mr. Speaker, there has been an issue about almost issues of conflict of interest or too many agencies doing almost the same thing. Having served in the Public Accounts Committee for the last 2 years, we have had serious issues of where we have asked for documents from a particular state officer, and the discussion has been, and the answer has been that those documents cannot be availed because they were taken by EACC or DCI. So the new Auditor General must find a way of working with the office of the DCI, with working with the office of EACC, with working with the oversight committees of Parliament, so that one does not seem to be hindering the works of the other. Because I must say from experience in Public Accounts Committee, I've seen this as a great hindrance towards ensuring that there is justice, and even this House serves its mandate of oversighting use of public funds, Mr. Speaker. Our audit, most of the time, has been based on how much money has been wasted, or has been lost. But I think, in as much as Dr. Ouko, the previous Auditor General, did a good job, in terms of audit of value for money for these government projects, has not been properly done. We have found projects that, yes, there was procurement was followed correctly, that project was done, yes, but in terms of the value for money that was used, then you find that this has really been wanting. And you're hoping that the new Auditor General will not just carry an audit on the prudent use of public funds, but also, and most importantly, that carry out an audit of value, where the value for money was achieved in terms of this project, Mr. Speaker. But with those many remarks, I would like to really congratulate CPA Janet on her appointment, and hoping that this House will approve her, and I'm sure that she's going to make a remarkable difference to leadership and prove that women can be as good and competent leaders like men and young people of this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Kimani, thank you for your good contribution, and you do justice to the youth ticket in this House by that eloquent delivery this afternoon. We shall have contribution from the Honorable Shaban, member for Taveta.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, pia nami kupatiwa fursa hii ili niweze kuongea swala la kuhusu kipengele cha 229 katika katiba yetu ya Kenya na mujibu wa sheria zetu hapa nchini. Mheshimiwa Spika, mkaguzi mkuu wa pesa za umma na utumiaji wa pesa za umma sio nafasi ambayo ni ya utani, ni nafasi ambayo imewekwa pale kwenye katiba yetu ya Kenya ili kuwe na wafanyikazi ambao wanaweza kusimamia ukaguzi wa utumiaji wa hela zetu hapa nchini. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi nasimama kuunga mkono kuwa Janet Gathungu ametosha tu kwa elimu, ametosha kwa kazi, manake mtu akiwa amefanya kazi kwa muda wa miaka 27 Mheshimiwa Spika hawezi kuwa amefikia kiwango kile alichofikia kama hakuwa amefanya kazi nzuri. Bila shaka ataweza kufanya hii kazi bila wasiwasi. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, mara nyingi watu wanafikiria kuwa labda mwanamke akipatiwa kazi ni kwa sababu yeye ni wa jinsia ya kike na hapatiwi kazi kwa sababu ya vile ambavyo amefuzu kimasomo na kikazi kupatiwa majukumu hayo ambayo atakayopatiwa katika ofisi ile. Janet Gathungu amefuzu katika kila hali, kwa mali, kwa njia zote zile, na isitoshe pia tunasema ni nani kama mama, kwa sababu kina mama wamepatiwa nafasi nzuri sana na Mwenyezi Mungu ya kuweza kuunda jamii na kusimamia jamii. Mheshimiwa Spika, mama huyu Janet Gathungu, kulingana na vile alivyofanya kazi pale kwa muda mrefu, nataka kwanza kutoa shukrani zangu za dhati kwa Mheshimiwa Rais kwa amempatia nafasi ya kuweza kuja kufanya kazi ile. Vile vile sisi kama bunge tutakubaliana na swala hilo, kwa sababu ya ukiangalia vile alivyo, bila shaka ataweza kazi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, jambo la muhimu la kutaja ni kuwa kama vile wenzangu walivyozungumza hapo mbeleni, ni kuwa tusicheleweshe nafasi hizi, manake njia zile ambazo tunazochukulia kupatiana hizi kazi zinachukua muda mrefu na zinaacha ofisi zile bila mtu kuweza kusimamia, bila wasiwasi kuweza kufanya zile kazi ambazo zinatakana kutenda, haswa kwenye ofisi kama hii ya ukaguzi ya mali, mkaguzi mkuu wa mali ya umma. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi sina mengi ya kusema isipokuwa ni kushukuru tu kuwa kwa mara ya kwanza mwanamke huyu Janet Gathungu anaweza kupatiwa nafasi hii ili aweze kusimamia ukaguzi wa mali zote za umma hapa nchini. Naunga mkono.
Is that the Honorable Naika that I see at the back there? The Honorable Naika? That's not Honorable Naika. Then we shall have the Honorable Martin Owino, member for Ndiwa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this as well, and I want to thank on Durango and the Finance Committee, and congratulate Janet Nancy Gathungu. Mr. Speaker, I want to make a point that every time we fill these positions, the idea of gender comes in. Let us look at integrity and competence of Kenyans. And by the way, globally, most management and positions actually is occupied by women. And they do extremely good. So this idea of gender all the time, I think let us give it a break. Point number 2, as we congratulate also Edward Ouko, who have existed, he did a good job. But during that time, Kenyans lost a lot of money. Not because of his doing, but Mr. Speaker, we have to relook at the Article 229, which spells out the period of auditing for these offices. If you audit an office after a year, to me this is reactionary, because the law stipulates 6 months after years elapse. That's why as a House, the Speaker, we cannot do much, because we will be looking how the funds were spent, not how the funds are being spent, so that we can have an intervention when it is going on the wrong way. So we are chasing after the money, not preventing the money from being lost. I think as a House of Legislation, we need to look at that Article 229. Mr. Speaker, on the same strength, the internal audit does not seem to be working for these departments and agencies, because they are domiciled in the same departments and counties. And most of the time, they are compromised. So Kenyans usually look for their help in the Auditor General. The other issue which we can also talk about, and I think my minority leader, John Mbadi, talked about it. Mr. Speaker, this is supposed to be an independent office. But I think the independency is chipped off by the nomination and appointment process. In other words, maybe we should think of having this office being run publicly through votes. So the public becomes the appointer of the office. And that gives confidence without, it's true, it may be American, but it works. It works. I can't buy that it can work, Mr. Speaker. We have to do something, because where is the effectiveness of this office when people stand and say we vote 3 trillion and then lose a third of it? It doesn't make sense. So I think we need to think about that. Mr. Speaker, I don't know whether the Kisumu thing was intentional, but what I would say, in all the appointments we make, let us be fair and practice equity in the distribution of opportunities and positions. Mr. Speaker, this trend is worrying to not only us, but many Kenyans, how the opportunities are distributed. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage that this office be resourced well so that they can do a good job. I think another member alluded to this fact, that they spread too thin, and sometimes when they bring report to us, we may not do much better with those reports, because some are not accurate, not because of their own marking, but because they spread too thin. Otherwise, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I want to support and also wish Nancy Janet Gidangu all well in that office. Thank you.
The member for Tindred. What is out of order, the Honorable Sanko? Just hold on, the Honorable member for Tindred. The Honorable Sankok, what is your point of order? Let him speak. Don't worry.
Honorable Speaker, I'm standing on a point of order 95. And as to whether auditors mature with age like wine, reading from the mood of the House, I see that we are still repeating the same thing. And I think it is in order for you to put the question. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Is it the mood of the House that we should, the mover should be called to reply? Will as members of that opinion say aye? Will as members of a contrary opinion say nay? The nays have it, we shall proceed. The Honorable Member for Tindred, proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just want to rise to support the motion. And first of all, Honorable Speaker, I want to thank the Committee of Finance and Planning.
The Honorable Lesonet, why you seem agitated today, and this is not
usually.
He
has just walked in, Honorable Speaker. I don't know why.
Yes, I've seen him walk in. I don't know what it is, which bee has bitten him, but let us hear him.
And they are not keeping social distance with the whip.
Yes, the Honorable Lesonet.
Mr. Speaker, I did my Bachelor of Commerce accounting option in 1992 with Nancy. And it will be unfair, Mr. Speaker, if you terminate
The Honorable
this proceeding.
Lesonet, what is out of order?
Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, it will be out of order if the debate on the appointment of Nancy is terminated before I contribute, because she's my classmate.
Sit down, the Honorable Lesonet.
She's my classmate, Mr. Speaker.
Sit down. You are completely out of order. The Honorable Member for Tindra,
Thank you.
proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I think Honorable Speaker's lesson is a ranking member and he doesn't know what's the point of order, what point of information. I think he needs to go through the standing orders. Honorable Speaker, let me just go straight away and say that I want to thank I've seen the report done by the Finance and Planning Committee. I have perused through it and looked at the resume and the CV and the procedures that went through it, especially on Article 229 and the Public Audit Act. Honorable Speaker, I think the committee has done a superb job. Honorable Speaker, the issue of public audit, the Office of the Auditor General, is critical to this country. The success, the financial and fiscal success of a nation hinges on what the Auditor General does. And more so, if the report is actually accepted and what the auditor advises, especially on fiscal audit. I'm saying so because in the last Parliament, that's the 11th Parliament, I was a member of Public Accounts Committee, Honorable Speaker and members. Auditor General does a lot of good work. He actually questions government spending, both in parastatals. He even questions government spending in mainstream government agencies. He even gives advices. But one of the things that I want this House to note is to really give the Auditor General teeth to support that particular office, especially by actually giving good remuneration to the office holders. Honorable Speaker, I have looked at the CV of Nancy Janet. It is quite impressive. She is very knowledgeable, very educated, with a lot of wide experience. Having been in Kenao, having been in the audit sector for quite a long time, spanning over 25 years. This one is going to give us a very good officer if only she is going to be supported. Supported by the executive, supported by the legislature, and supported by the general public, so that we don't view auditors as witch hunters. Honorable Speaker, an auditor in any organization is supposed to give that particular organization a good standing in terms of fiscal and financial way. But if an auditor is looked at as an individual who is out to witch hunt, the last office bearer, Dr. Ouko, did a superb job. He even went to the extent of questioning and talking about how much the government was losing. Now we are talking of a budget of 3 trillion. But if you look at what is actually spent and trickled down to the people, it is not more than 2 trillion. So what is the need that we are going to have a very huge budget, yet we are not going to ensure that it is well utilized? That's why one of the members who was here talked about the prudence in public spending. And I think the success of this office holder, which has a very good CV, which has a very good experience, which has a good knowledge, will be hinged on the support that this House and the executive will give that office. Otherwise, that particular office is going to remain a talk shop. And I want this House to note that even the Public Audit Act is very clear on this. Even in our own offices and even in the constituencies, our success is actually based on looking at the audit reports, appreciating those particular reports, and actually taking the advice of the auditors. But when we don't take that particular advice, then the auditor just lament and lament for 8 years. 2, Honorable Speaker, I just want to point out that this office has been vacant for some duration, some time. I think members have talked about it, and we really need to ensure that in future, we need to put mechanism and legislation in place so that there is no void. Now that the office has almost been vacant for almost 1 year, we have suffered in terms of government audit reports. Even the Division of Revenue Bill hinges on the report of the Auditor General. So that if the audited accounts for the last financial years are not up to date, then what goes to counties will be actually a disservice from this house, because, not because of our making, but because the office bearer was not in place. So, Honorable Speaker, I would want to urge the members of this house to give the requisite support, the necessary support to the office bearer as it comes in, as when we approve it, but also to ensure that her report, the report that shall come from that house, is supported and actually given the necessary teeth that it requires in terms of finances and also in terms of legislative support. I therefore support this appointment. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The member for Mavoko, member, the Honorable Kingola. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Allow me to join my colleagues who are supporting this motion. Mr. Speaker, from the onset, I must say, I've served the Committee on Public Accounts Committee, and Mr. Speaker, as I stand here, I want to wish well the former Auditor General, Dr. Edward Ouko. Mr. Speaker, this is a gentleman who took this office at a time when the political landscape in this country was very adverse. Mr. Speaker, it is always known that a new office comes with teething problems. And Mr. Speaker, when Ouko was appointed to this office, he had his challenges. Of course, he was accused of being partisan. He was accused of being opposition. But Mr. Speaker, we have seen the best audited reports emanating during his time, Mr. Speaker, are very powerful. And I must confess that I'm a trained accountant. And Mr. Speaker, for someone to rise to the rank of an Auditor General, it takes a lot. It means a lot. You go through a lot of certifications, Mr. Speaker. And when I see the way that office has been arranged, Mr. Speaker, it is Dr. Ouko who was the main whistleblower in terms of corruption, in terms of impunity, in terms of misuse of public funds. Mr. Speaker, it is through that office that this Parliament, through the various oversight committees, we have been able to spot, to pick out government agencies that are not accounting or being transparent in whatever they are doing. Mr. Speaker, I have seen all the opinions that the Auditor General has been giving out. Mr. Speaker, it is my wish to see this government take to task accounting officers, those are PSs, who year in, year out, financial year in, year out, are getting adverse opinions, disclaimer, qualified. Mr. Speaker, and again, it has become a tradition in this country. We see a PS who has misappropriated, who has not put or kept his books of accounts properly. When a time comes for examination, they have a narrative always, it was the former PS. It was the former PS. I think, Mr. Speaker, we should now, as Parliament, take to task any accounting officer in the government who has been given an opinion, adverse for that matter, must account to the last, or else all the entities that have been tasked to make sure that the account all being held culpable, Mr. Speaker, so that we can stop this narrative every time this PS was not here, I was not here, and it has become a systematic denial. So, Mr. Speaker, I agree with members who say we need to give support to this office, even as Nancy is coming in. I know her, Mr. Speaker, she is a professional, she is qualified, she is in fact, she holds what we call institutional memory. She has been working in that office, and I have no doubt in my mind that she's going to perform the duty of Auditor General diligently, and she's up to the task. Mr. Speaker, unless we support this officer, She will be giving reports year in, year out. But the executive must accept, and Parliament to give support to the Auditor General, so that all the reports that they are pointing out should be implemented accordingly. And any person pointed to be culpable, Mr. Speaker, to be jailed or even judged or surcharged, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you know the importance of audited accounts. I know during that 1 year when, like, we didn't have an Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, so many sections of the government and even of the economy suffered. Mr. Speaker, you know, banking, the county governments, it cuts across. Mr. Speaker, there was a lot of suffering. And now I'm so glad that with this committee of finance, I've come up with this name, and I can assure you, I am sure, and I know this lady will deliver for Kenya. It is now upon us to give her the support required so that we can clean and cleanse of corruption, theft within our government agencies and the economy at large. I support. Thank you.
The Honorable Lassonet, today you seem to be very intent on breaching all the rules of the House. Social distancing requires that I should be at least a meter away from, and you seem to be of the opinion that just because somebody was your classmate, then that person is as white as pamba. But it's not fair. It's not fair, the Honorable Lassonet. The Honorable Member, the Honorable Chachu. Ganya Chachu. No, I was not giving you, I was just admonishing you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving this opportunity to support the report of the Parliamentary Committee on Finance and National Planning on the vetting of Ms. Nancy Gatungu. Mr. Speaker, sir, from the outset, I commend the committee for a good report. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Office of the Auditor General is critical for the oversight mandate of our Parliament. Mr. Speaker, sir, 3 critical oversight committees of this House depend and consume the report of the Auditor General for the oversight work as an organ of this House. These are Public Accounts Committee, Public Investment Committee, as well as Special Funds Committee. So, Speaker, sir, an effective office of the Auditor General will enable Parliament to oversight the government effectively. I said government deliberately because not just the executive, it is judiciary, Parliament, as well as even the constitutional offices of this nation. So, Speaker, sir, this oversight is a major mandate of our Parliament. And this office is critical to our functioning and for us to enable to play our constitutional mandate. So, Speaker, sir, it's so unfortunate that for almost a year, this office was almost vacant because there was no substantive Auditor General in that office. And for that period, so, Speaker, sir, I'm not sure we have not lost billions of money, if not more, just because of that laxity or that period when really nobody was watching or playing that critical role of oversighting the government. So, Speaker, sir, I had a chance to be a member of Public Accounts Committee in 10th Parliament and for some times in 11th Parliament. In 10th Parliament, that was during the independent constitution, before the 2010 constitution. So, Speaker, sir, as soon as we established the Office of Auditor General and Mr. Ouko was appointed, and we started getting reports from Mr. Ouko, we could see a world of difference on the quality of the reports that we are getting, and we are able to critically oversight the government because of the support and quality reports and timely reports, which are also very relevant from the Office of the Auditor General. And for these reasons, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a critical office, and it's critical for the functioning of Parliament, really in oversight mandate. So, Speaker, sir, I really hope that this nominee, who I'm supporting, will be able to surpass the good work of Mr. Ouko in terms of quality and timely reports to enable this country to even have serious oversight and serious accountability in terms of how we manage our national finances. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the nominee because from the report of the vetting committee of the Parliamentary Committee on Planning and Finance and National Planning, so Speaker, sir, can critically see that the critical elements that are required for Parliament to vet public appointees for public offices have been clearly taken care of. So Speaker, sir, what do we look for? We look for to ensure that the person that's being vetted is suitable in terms of professional experience, in terms of academic qualifications, as well as the issue of integrity. In terms of professional experience, Mr. Speaker, sir, is a woman of letters with a first degree, second master's degree, and now working on a PhD. Not only accounting, but even in statistics management. A critical qualification she needs to perform well in this office. In terms of professional experience, Mr. Speaker, sir, she has worked in public office for over 3 decades, 27 years to be exact. So, Speaker, sir, in terms of integrity, all the public offices, whether it's EACC, DCI, and all others, have given a clean bill of record. With this kind of information before us, so Speaker, sir, we have a duty to support her, to wish her well, and hope that within that 8 years that she'll be serving this nation as the first female Auditor General, she'll be able to serve us well, and we'll remember her fondly as we remember the founding or the pioneer of that office, Mr. Uko, for the good work he did for this nation. I support, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Manje, member for Kajiado North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this motion and say I support the appointment of Janet Nancy as the new Auditor General. Also congratulating Robert Ouko for the work well done. I want to tell her that this is a very challenging position that requires somebody who is independent-minded, who will serve Kenyans. Because at the end of the day, our country is not fully developed because of the way we spend our money and the way we audit what we contribute. Actually, the main idea behind Kenyans coming together is to bring the resources together and try to do what people cannot do individually. Hence, these resources, when it is brought together, should be properly audited so that we can achieve development in this particular country. So she should be one of the people who will make sure that the country is developed by making sure that these resources is taken to where it is supposed to go. Also, us as Parliament should make sure that we give enough resources for this office to operate. Because most of the cases, the previous Auditor General was complaining the resources given was not enough. And the resources that is supposed to safeguard is a lot. Therefore, the resources to safeguard this kitty should be equivalent and should be more to make sure that he has auditors in every sector and every part of the country. Mr. Speaker, in the previous times, there is a time I was in Public Accounts Committee, and the Auditor General was telling us there are some counties that are normally not audited properly because of the issue of insecurity and such kind of things. It is my take, if the public resources cannot be audited, then there is no point of giving resources on those areas. It is as simple as that. The Auditor General should be given all the necessary security he requires to go and audit those particular areas. Otherwise, money gets lost in that area, and the areas do not grow because of that lack of that audit. Mr. Speaker, also I tend to think us as Parliament have also a big role to play to make sure that the public fund is properly utilized. Because if you check the kind of reports that we have in Parliament and they have never been implemented, then it means we have also to come out strongly and say each report of the Auditor General should be implemented to the last point. Because there are so many recommendations and they are never implemented. Therefore, it becomes like just a report like any other. So, Mr. Speaker, I tend to think if we implement half of what the Auditor General in this country has recommended, we can make a very big stride in development in this particular country. Mr. Speaker, I also tend to think we should devolve auditing to the Rust unit, because if you check the way we are using resources at the county, then it means we have to do something about it. We cannot just let it go like that. We have to make sure that the resources is well done. And I want to say Nancy is capable because she's an IT expert. She can do audit, the current audit of preventing more pilferage of public fund instead of the traditional audit where you expect to go and audit papers. So she should use the IT knowledge that she has to make sure that she does, as we procure items, then they are audited at the same time. Mr. Speaker, there is a current kind of performance audit which I think she should embrace instead of the traditional one. That one, I think it can really help. And also making sure that the projects and the documentations correspond, because sometimes you might get good books, but when you go to the ground, you don't get the projects. So what is in the field and what is in the paper should correspond. So I think she has a major task that she has to do, but we pray for her. Let her be independent. Let her make sure that there is no collaboration between the procurement officers, auditors, and implementers. And by so doing, she has to come out strongly on the ground and make sure that she breaks the cartels that go to the ground and make sure that the corruption continues. So she has a major role to play. I wish to support her and wish her success in her new role as the Auditor General in this country. I support her.
The Honorable Nguna Ngusia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity given to me to contribute on this motion. Mr. Speaker, let me confess the truth of the matter, that when I saw this appointment, I was really shocked. But at the same time, I never knew who Janet is. Mr. Speaker, let me express the interest that the person I was actually supporting to become Auditor General was Mr. Kamar, because I've interacted with so many staff in that office. However, I am supporting the appointment because what committee has really done is a lot, based on the education, based on the impeccable credentials the lady has. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to support her. But one of the key fundamental concern I have in regards to the Auditor General report, Mr. Speaker, you recall last week, it's when they were actually presenting reports for financial year 2018-2019, just last week. We are expecting them to act as per the Article 29 to be presenting their reports in time within 6 months after the financial year lapses. Mr. Speaker, I will be anticipating this by the end of this year, that is in December, before we go to recess. We need to have this audited financial statement for financial year 2019-2020. But I'm sure it is a big ask for the Auditor General offices to adhere the same. Mr. Speaker, I would like also to express the concern our President actually took when he was actually filling up this position. The Auditor General, the outgoing one, it took almost a year getting Janet into place. And Mr. Speaker, when I check the record of one of the best run parastatals and even the private companies I have worked in before, we used to appoint these directors long time ago, 6 months before any office could become vacant. And I'll give an example of Safaricom, which is the most profitable company which in Africa. When the seat fell vacant, actually it was announced who is going to take the responsibility in almost a year to go. And that is why we are failing as a government. As this important office enshrined in our constitution, we are supposed to be getting these appointments actually in time to ensure proper information, and or rather there is no delay in presenting the reports. Mr. Speaker, I would also like to ask the incoming Auditor General in his office to work closely with our committees in the Senate and National Assembly. We look at recently what our Senate did in Kitui County report, and I know it's not only Kitui County itself. We were talking about the financial statements which were actually audited 2 years ago. Mr. Speaker, this we cannot allow it. We need timely report to be presented to us. And if we can actually have the Office of Auditor General working on monthly or even after the semi-annual basis, we will have proper continuation of the information, and information will reach the citizens in time. And much of it has been said. I think our academic credentials from Janet quite resonate very well. I'm not supporting her because she was a classmate of Lesonet, who is my good friend. But based on what I have seen and what I've seen in the report, she is capable of delivering to this. Before I conclude, let me say that this is an office that needs somebody who should not in any way support any political party, or rather have what we call political inclination. This is an office that requires independence of highest order. So I'm expecting Janet not to be influenced by any political party or any government that is going to assume the office. And also, this is an office also needs to account to Kenya the three values: the economy, the efficiency, and effectiveness. They have to make sure Kenyans get the three values of their money. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Honorable Ngusia, you're on point. If you have read the report, you will notice that the nominee actually was tasked on whether she has any political leanings or any, she's associated to any political party, and she responded that she has no such leanings. The Honorable Mzigi Mnene, the member for Taita Taveta.
Asante Bwana Spika, hata mimi kwa kunipatia fursa ili niweze kuchangia kwa swala hili. Na nikianza kabisa, ninasema ya kwamba hata mimi ninaungana na wenzangu kuunga mkono uteuzi huu wa huyu Bi Nancy kwa hii ofisi ambayo ni ofisi muhimu sana katika nchi yetu hii ya Kenya. Na nikiunga mkono, ninafurahi kujua kwamba huyu Bi Nancy ana ufahamu mzuri sana kwa masuala haya ya ukaguzi wa mambo ya fedha na mahesabu. Bwana Spika, nimepata kujua pia Bi Nancy amekuwa akifanya kazi kwa muda mrefu kwa ofisi hii na kwa miaka mingi na kwa vitengo mbalimbali. Na hivyo basi ana uzoefu mzuri wa kazi hii ambao unahitajika kwa yeye kuweza kufanya kazi ambao ameteuliwa kufanya. Na hata pia tukiangalia na tukikagua stakabadhi zake, kuangalia mambo ya elimu, basi pia tumepata kujua huyu Bi Nancy elimu yake inamruhusu kufanya kazi hii. Amepitia viwango vya elimu ambao vinahitajika kuweza kufanya kazi hii. Na kwa kifupi basi, kwa sababu mengi tumeshajadili, nitasema ninaunga mkono uteuzi wake na ninamtakia kila laheri katika kazi yake. Asante sana Bwana Spika.
The Honorable Nur Sophia, member for Ijara.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this chance to contribute to this motion. First, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the committee for a report well done, and from onstart, I want to say I'm supporting the committee's report. And Mr. Chair, and having appreciated the committee's work, and again, I want to appreciate our Constitution of 2010 that has created the Auditors General as an independent body, Mr. Speaker. Being a person who contributed very heavily and who believe she is one among the framers of our Constitution of 2010, I want to say that we did job well done for creating this particular body that is independent by nature, Mr. Speaker. When we were looking at the Constitution and many learned friends engaged with us at that level, it was because we thought giving an independent an institution as important as the Auditor General's office will be key, and it will the link from any influence that can be influenced by any individual. Mr. Speaker, going through Nancy's CV, I've heard many people talking and saying that Nancy was appointed to this because of high education, high experience, and others saying because she's a woman. We have gone beyond that as women of this nation. We are using our accreditation, our CV, our experience as the women of this nation. We are equal to the task, and we have gone beyond begging on our positions on basis on our gender. That is history, and it has gone. We have learned women in this country. We have women who have PhDs in any field you ask, Mr. Speaker, you will get them. So, for me, I want to say, looking through Nancy's CV, she's capable, she has the experience, she has the knowledge, she has experience of 27 years, Mr. Speaker. 27 years growing within the system of audit system, Mr. Speaker, is not a joke. And that is giving her an opportunity to do her work properly, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, yes, there are people who, from the same office, who applied for the same position with her. Those ones will ask her as an individual to work with them, because she cannot work in isolation. She must bring everybody on board, and everybody will be able to support her so that she can achieve her mandate, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, runs a very crucial, and it has a crucial mandate in checking through resource management, resource usage, wastage within the ministries and other parastatal and other organs, and that gives us not only this parliament for an oversight use, but it gives to every Kenyan to look through the Auditor General's report so that they can see the taxpayer, the resources they have paid to this nation, whether it has been used properly or not. And they can ask, and they can use that report for accountability purpose. It is not only for this House, Mr. Speaker, but it gives an opportunity where every Kenyan will be able to look through the report so that they will be able to see whether their resources have been used properly, whether there have been resources that have been wasted, whether there is wastage within ministries. This is the office that can give us that opportunity, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, this office again, Mr. Speaker, when it is looking through its reports, Mr. Speaker, and when it is auditing various organs in the government, and when we are saying government cuts across including the Parliament, the executive, the judiciary, and within those, all the other parastatals that comes below them, Mr. Speaker. The report of the Auditor General will be able to tell us whether the resources that have planned for certain ministries, whether that money has been used, whether there was value for money used within those ministries, within those parastatals, and any other organ that use public money, Mr. Speaker, whether the money have been used properly, whether there is value for that money that has been given. Sometimes there are money that are allocated and resources, and you will see the auditor's report telling you that this certain ministry or certain accounting officer have not used the money properly. And again, as a house, as a budget-making house, we do not use that resources to judge that particular minister or that particular PS why that resources have not been used and why do they need more resources to be allocated to them. Mr. Speaker, I want to leave at that and support the report. Thank you so much for giving me this chance.
Honorable members, there's still a lot of interest in this, but the rules require that this motion be debated for 3 hours. It is now just about 10 minutes, 15 minutes to complete it. I will therefore call on the mover to now reply. And members, I'll plead with you to stay in the House so that we can complete this business as per rules. So, mover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to, in replying, to thank the members for the immense interest they have shown, but I'm sympathetic to the member, Honorable 001. If it is your wish, Mr. Speaker, that I can donate 2 minutes for him to just say a word.
That is all. You would like only the Honorable Sankok? The Honorable Otiende, the Honorable Ongera, and the Honorable Lesonet. 4 minutes. The Honorable Lesonet, you will kick it off.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
The Honorable Sankok to start. The Honorable Lesonet will be last. You seem not to be following the proceedings of the House today.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't give myself the mic. I mean, the mic is here, Mr. Speaker.
No, the Honorable Sankok was on his feet, so he will start, followed by the Honorable Dr. Otiende, the Honorable Janet Ongera, then yourself.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. And as the earlier speakers had put it, I do support this report 100% because the committee have done a thorough job, Honorable Speaker. And Janet Nancy Kadongo is overqualified, Honorable Speaker. And if really auditors mature with age like wine, she have really matured through the ranks of the auditing profession, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I just want to give an advice, Honorable Speaker, that let us see projects that are supposed to be implemented by the national government, sometimes National Constituency Development Fund, county government, assuming that those projects are the ones who have done them and allocating that money, Honorable Speaker. So she should read the Constitution very well and know the devolved function, Honorable Speaker. Otherwise, governors are running away with projects of the national government, Honorable Speaker. Another advice to the appointing authority, Honorable Speaker, let us keep on considering persons with disabilities. I will not tire in mentioning the issue of persons with disability. We have not been given our rightful positions. Women have gotten theirs. It is now for persons with disability to be considered in every appointment, Honorable Speaker, in line with Article 54 of our Constitution.
The Honorable Dr. Otiende.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Because I have a short time, I will not say what I wanted to say. Only three quick things. One, Mr. Speaker, we must commend the former Auditor General, Dr. Edward Uko, for doing a good job, a stellar job. It is a shame that after doing such a good job to this country, he is now being put to act like a beggar to beg for his dues for which he worked for 8 years. That is a shame that needs condemnation. And perhaps the report should find pride of place of that. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, it is also a shame that we are now approving an Auditor General with a gap of over 1 year. That gap was based on a misreading of the law. The Independent Officers Appointment Act of 2011, somebody misadvised the executive that the law does not allow you to commence that process until the holder has left. That is wrong. It is not based on the law, on Section 5. And it is important we correct that because it is likely to recur when it comes to the new Chief Justice or any other holder. That argument, if sustained, will mislead us. And the Leader of Majority needs to look into that. Thirdly and lastly is to advise the incoming Auditor General that these offices, they are given to us, independent offices, so that you can have courage, you can have independence, and you can have professionalism. If you lose any of those, then the need for independence of those offices go, and Kenyans will start demanding that they are necessary. Let us hold on to the truth and expectation of the Constitution. With that, I support, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
The Honorable Janet Vera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, like my colleagues, I rise to congratulate the chairman of this committee for bringing these nominees' name for us to approve. Mr. Speaker, sir, I'm very happy to note that Janet, who shares my name, is competent on this job, Mr. Speaker. And I'm even more happy to note, Mr. Speaker, that she's a woman. And I cannot forget to belabor the point that we are not all the time mourning that we are being given positions. As women, we still appreciate when one of our own is given a high-deserving job like this, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to commend the committee for having seen it appropriate to bring her name. Mr. Speaker, however, just like my brother Otiende said, there is a monster in the house. Mr. Speaker, sir, I feel very sad that when Ouko did such a good job, the outgoing Auditor General, he was the real whistleblower. He's the only one who brought the reports into this parliament. The way he has been treated by the executive is displeasing, Mr. Speaker, sir. That the man is actually literally going to beg for his dues through the media. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, I hope that Janet will do the right job. There are so many reports hanging out there in the Auditor General's office of corruption from the counties, from the national government, but they never see the light of the day. They are never brought to this parliament so that we can deal with them. Mr. Speaker, sir, even that office corruption needs to be wiped out so that we can be sure that the reports that reach us are actually the reports that were from the ground. I thank you for giving me and I support the motion.
Finally, the classmate.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me the last opportunity to contribute on Nancy. True, Mr. Speaker, that she is qualified, that not only it is written in her CV, I did see her in class in 1992 when we both completed Bachelor of Commerce Accounting option at the University of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker, not any other university, at the University of Nairobi, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the university, Mr. Speaker, there are only 2 points I want to put across. The office of the Auditor General, Mr. Speaker, is an independent office. And there is one confusion which has been in previous occupants of the office, Mr. Speaker, probably including Mr. Oko, that they fail to understand that they report to this house. They work for this house. They work for Parliament, Mr. Speaker. All the reports generated by the Office of the Auditor General are for consumption by this honorable house. And Mr. Speaker, we also want to call upon members of the Public Accounts Committee to rise to the occasion that all reports generated by the Office of the Auditor General should promptly, Mr. Speaker, be processed by this house so that where certain actions need to be taken, are taken with time in mind, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the other point, Mr. Speaker, and probably to answer on to the question of the fact that the former Auditor General has not been paid, is basically an issue of budget, Mr. Speaker. That this House, Mr. Speaker, without heaping blame on the executive, should put a budget line to pay the benefits of the former Auditor General, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the budget making is the business of this House. And members, Mr. Speaker, who are surprised that the Auditor General has not been paid, should have been very quick to make sure that there is such an allocation in budget, whether at Pensions Department or at the Office of the Auditor General, so that such payments are made. And I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, going forward, probably this year, when we meet as Budget Committee, we should be able to make sure that there is a provision towards the benefits of the former Auditor General. Mr. Speaker, as this House, again, for budget, for the Office of the Auditor General to be effective, we need to allocate them adequate resources, Mr. Speaker. There has been a lot of resources allocated to judiciary. We need to see such commensurate allocation equally to the Office of the Auditor General. And Mr. Speaker, with those remarks, I thank you and congratulate Nancy for her appointment. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Waihenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me, in concluding, Mr. Speaker, to particularly thank the NGOs who responded by submitting memoranda. This includes Africa Transparency International, National Taxpayers Association, Center for Enhancing Democracy and Good Governance, and the Kenyans for Justice, and all other persons who presented
The Honorable
memoranda.
Waihenya, remember you have only 1 minute.
Yeah, so
before you
Mr.
read all
Speaker,
those things.
I want to reply by thanking members of Parliament for turning out in large numbers from the recess to come and approve this nominee. We now await the President's endorsement so that Ms. Janet Nancy Kafoi Gathogu can take up the work of Auditor General of the Republic of Kenya. I beg to reply, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, having certified that we have sufficient numbers in the chamber and out there, I now put the question that, taking into consideration the findings of the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning in its report on the vetting of the nominee for appointment as the Auditor General, laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, July 15, 2020, and pursuant to the provisions of Article 229, Subarticle 1 of the Constitution, Section 11, Subsection 8 of the Public Audit Act 2015, and Sections 3 and 8 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act 2011, this House approves the appointment of Ms. Nancy Janet Kavoi Gathungu as the Auditor General. Will as many of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Honorable members, I just wish to remind you that these are hard times, and we should recall that we should try as much as possible when you are in public places to continue setting a good example by wearing our masks and sanitizing our hands and taking care of ourselves. This is a responsibility that we must take with utmost seriousness, and I hope to see you here soon again when we resume the proceedings of this House. Honorable members, the time being 6:10 p.m., this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, 28th July 2020 at 2:30 p.m.
The Tindol.
Yes. Omolo,
Yes, sir.
what you said, eh?
On the next episode of Corner.